Okay, council, please make your way up here. We're past time. Uh-oh. Tyler. My talking point.
I've worn it every single time you give it a kiss.
Really?
It's the only time.
Interesting. All right, council, we ready?
Yes, sir.
Good evening and welcome to the July 16th Federal Way City Council meeting. Would you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everyone. It's great to see such a great turnout. We've got a busy agenda item driven calendar this evening. But the first thing we're going to do is acknowledge a friend of Federal Way and somebody who has done a tremendous amount for this community. Someone who I refer to as Mr. Mayor in whatever meeting we're in. We are here to provide and to give the key to the city to former two-time mayor of the city of Federal Way, Michael Park. And this is a program that I started 5 years ago and that we conduct at these city council meetings because I really felt like one of the things we want to do is make sure that we're recognizing the contributions of individuals who have come and served in our community and done so much in our community. There are so many stories to tell in this city, and one of the tremendous stories of success and commitment to this community is former Mayor Michael Park. And Michael, actually, if you could come to the podium while I briefly talk about you. You know, city government is really an honor and a privilege, and when everyone here is honored to do the work here. Mr. Mayor Michael Park did this for quite some time, and I'll talk about that. But we make a lot of difficult decisions, and some decisions are agonizing, and we go back and forth, and some are quite easy. And I have to tell you, for all the decisions I've made so far this year, Mr. Mayor, this is actually the easiest decision I will make this year. And so, just a few comments I'd like to make. The decision to award the key to Mayor Park was really one that I've been thinking about for quite some time. You know, I get an idea that I'm going to do a key to the city, and it's something I kind of keep close to the vest for a long time, and I think to myself, oh, I just can't wait till that day. And that day has arrived, and I'm so glad that your friends and family are here with you today. Michael was first appointed to the council in 1995. That was 24 years ago, where he served through 2011 for a total of 15 and a half years. He is the only mayor in the city's history to serve 2 terms under the previous council manager form of government. I had the honor of serving as his deputy mayor during one of those terms. Whenever he and I speak at groups, I always tell those groups absolutely correctly that everything I learned about municipal governments I learned from this man. And really a lot of it had to do with just bringing people together and treating people with respect, and I could go on and on. He started the Korean City Quarterly Meeting, which will celebrate its 28th year in September. It is actually really one of the cornerstones of collaboration and partnership in this community. He's also one of the founders of the Korean school here in town, which celebrated its 8th anniversary in April, which I know several of the council, the deputy mayor and I know we're sitting next to each other, and several council members were there as well at Sahali Middle School. And now that school now has 22 students, and just think of all the hundreds of students that will go through that school over the years. One of the things that really stood out to me about Michael, Mr. Mayor, during my time serving with him was that he was always a stickler for the details when it came to city budget. Well, actually, one of the things that always kind of made me laugh is, whatever year we were in, he'd say, is that in 2015 dollars or is that in 2011 dollars? And I always nodded like I pretended like I knew what I was talking about. But he was absolutely just a stickler on the details, and was really one of the individuals that helped us put our city budgets together. He was also a forward thinker when it came to growth in Federal Way. Perhaps his greatest skill, and one that he really utilizes to this day, is bringing people together. I spoke to a group of college students visiting here earlier this month from the university in Seoul, Korea, and who was at the center of the interaction? Mayor Park. And Michael also played a pivotal role in bringing the Korean American National Sports Festival to Federal Way last month. This is a festival that has a 40-year history. Its 20th year, or its 20th celebration was here in Federal Way, and they've been all over the country, and it really is. It brought over 5,000 people to this community, and it looked like a mini Olympics as they came into a Memorial Stadium, and that was a direct result of much of Mayor Park's work and contributions. One of the great parts of this job, again, is the ability and the honor of awarding the key to deserving people in the community who really pour their heart and soul into everything they do here. This council in this city would not be where we are at today without the work of Michael Park. And to that, I say congratulations. Thank you, Mike. I want to read this before I give it to you, and then we'll do some pictures. The key of the City of Federal Way, Washington, presented on July 16, 2019, to former mayor and council member Michael Park, by Mayor Jim Farrell. Your decades of service as a city council member, mayor, and leader in the Korean community have brought cultures together in friendship and leave an enduring legacy for years to come. Thank you for your many years of service. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Awesome. Please. Oh, wow. Oh. Thank you. The floor is yours. Hey, Tyler, after the mayor speaks and after his friend, after we all talk, we're going to have a group picture. Okay.
Do I have 3 minutes?
Maybe 5.
Yeah, exactly. Mayor Park, do I get 3 minutes? And then Susan said, we can give him 5. No, you can take as long as you need, Mr. Mayor.
I remember when we installed this 3-minute clock. Thank you. Honorable Mayor Farrell and all the council member.
Is the microphone on?
You can come here and talk.
how federally become a city and deepening our cityhood root. So I was proud of part of that process about 16, 17 years. But with this, I'll take this as an encouragement to continue do the work I have been doing after the 2011 retiring of city government. So Federal Way is my hometown beside my natural hometown in South Korea. So Federal Way become my forever hometown. I'm going to be here with you growing mature the city of Federal Way. You guys doing an excellent job. Basically, you are representing almost 100,000 citizens of Federal Way. Sometimes you not agree each other, sometimes disagreement. That's the nature of your business. So I hope you can make and lead our community right and appropriate direction. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Mr. Mayor, we stand on your shoulders. Thank you so much for your foundation that you helped build for us. So let's have a council, excuse me, not council, let's have a picture, council. We already have a council, let's have a picture. Oh, and after, you guys, after we do the picture, we're going to have a break for 15 minutes. We've got a cake back there. Everybody is required to have a piece of cake, some coffee, some punch, and a party, and for about 15 minutes. So let's come on down and do the picture.
Do you agree? Yeah. Good. It is steeper.
We need the kids in here. Come on. Okay, everybody, let's break for about 15 minutes, okay? There's cake and refreshments in the back. Okay, congratulations again, Mayor Park. Okay, order please. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started with our presentations. Thank you, everyone who have stayed around. We've got some important business to take care of. All right, first we've got the South King County Communities Fund. We've got our Environmental Engagement Program Manager Andy Gregory, and Local Government Relations Manager Dave Kaplan. If you can come on up and let's give the presentation. I believe you've got a PowerPoint.
Did you guys get the mic going?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Great. Thanks, everyone, for having us here this evening. My name is Andy Gregory, and I am the Environmental Engagement Program Manager for the Port of Seattle. Did you guys get the presentation loaded up? Should I do that, or?
Let's see. Oh, here he comes. Here comes our IT manager, Thomas. Thomas Fitchner, everyone.
Yay, Thomas.
Yay!
Clap yet. All right.
Dun dun dun.
Yeah, would have been sent to you guys. Adjustments. Presentations. Could be this one. There we go. Awesome. Okay, thanks so much, guys. So, 5 objectives here this evening. First, to introduce the origin of the South King County Fund, which is a $10 million fund from the Port of Seattle aimed targeted for the near airport communities here, to define the principles that have been set forth in a motion by the Port Commission, to provide some context for spending within the Port Statutory Authority, to present our outreach plan, and then to allow some time for question and answer. So in November of 2018, the Port Commission passed a motion creating the South King County Fund. This is a $10 million fund for to be distributed over the next 5 years, with the goal of getting $750,000 out the door this year. That the idea being that the funding will go to airport communities here near SeaTac Airport. So the fund right now is based on these 8 principles, which the Port Commission passed in a motion just about 3 weeks ago. So this is all quite new, and we're working on developing several other portions of the fund, but we're basically working so far with these principles. So the fund will be used to fund projects here in South King County, described as the near airport communities, with other exceptions on a need basis. The fund will prioritize community input in port decision-making. The fund will support port equity policies and practices, giving underrepresented communities access to opportunities, and using equity policies to evaluate potential initiatives and to establish direct desired outcomes. That the fund will provide added benefits, adding to current port programs to address airport noise, increase environmental health, and sustainability. That the fund will prioritize projects that are ready to proceed, that are shovel-ready. The goal is to get money out the door as quickly as possible to projects that can go out to benefit the community. That it will build on established programs and commitments to fulfill current obligations. And finally, that the fund will both promote innovation and encourage matching funds where possible. So it's important, I think, to note that the Port of Seattle is a limited purpose government, and as defined by the legislature, and that there are statutory limits on the port's use of funds. That we're developing project selection criteria at a staff level based on these limits, and that we're really hoping to use the pilot phase this fall to test some projects to see just what we can fund and what these mechanisms are. So really a cornerstone of this entire fund and this project is going to be a deep and meaningful engagement strategy with the community. That we are beginning here, and this is the first phase, this formative phase of engagement, which is starting with the elected officials in the 6 cities surrounding SeaTac Airport, as well as grass-top community leaders. So these are leaders of community-based organizations that have their finger on the pulse of what their constituents and their members are looking for and needing, as well as working with established stakeholder groups such as the START Committee and the Highline Forum. Beyond that, we'll be working into the fund promotion, management, and distribution phase, which will start in the fall of 2019 and move beyond through the end of the fund, which will be in 2023. And this will include, the Port is in the process of negotiating a contract with a community engagement consultant to develop a community liaison model for deep engagement with underrepresented communities throughout South King County, as well as conducting community open houses, working with stakeholder groups and elected officials on a continuing basis, and then a broad marketing and advertising campaign. And this is really targeted at soliciting project ideas, at understanding what unmet needs there are out in the communities that we can help to either expedite or work on setting up solutions for. So slightly more detailed timeline of the outreach phase here. We'll be starting with this formative engagement throughout the summer and going into the early fall, and then moving into the promotional phase come the fall and into next spring with a full fund launch targeted for April of 2020. So what we're here to ask you all for tonight, goes for all the folks here on the council and the mayor, as well as the folks in the audience here, is to, given the principles that you've heard tonight and recognizing the constraints that the Port may have on our authority for spending, we want to hear some project ideas from you. And so whether that's directly with us here tonight or whether it's through this email address that you can see up on the presentation, we're open to comments, feedback, questions, whatever you guys may have. We understand and recognize that we are very early on in the phase of rolling out this fund, and so there is a lot that we don't know at this point. And like I said, what we're really hoping for is that in the process of working on some pilot projects through the fall, we will be able to iron out some of the details in terms of the ways that we'll be able to distribute money creatively into the community. So I would like you to direct that, any input that you have to this email address, skcfund@portseattle.org. We'll also be facilitating an interjurisdictional conversation about project ideas at the upcoming Highline Forum at the end of the month, as well as working with some community members at the START meeting in August. So in summary, the fund is $10 million over 5 years to be distributed in accordance with the 8 principles we've laid out. Selection criteria will be based within the scope of the Port's spending authority, and that we'll be really focusing on deep and thorough engagement through both the promotional and formative phases of the outreach plan. And we're hoping that you will all share your ideas with each other, with other jurisdictions, and with us. So, and now we have some time here for questions.
Council, any questions? Councilmember Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Andy, for your presentation. One question I had is, what can community members expect at these open houses or forums? And then what happens with the information that's gathered from the community at these meetings?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we're still, finalizing our strategy for these meetings going forward, but we're really focusing on equitable community engagement. So I think that what we'll be doing is making sure that there are translation services available, food and childcare, as well as potentially transportation stipends, to make sure that folks can get out to these meetings, that during the process of soliciting input, that we'll be working on identifying community needs that are related to environment, to health, to open spaces, things that that are unmet needs within the communities. And so that input will go to feed into our project, both our project our list of potential projects, as well as hopefully working to adaptively manage the fund to meet the needs of the community.
All right. Councilmember Stephanie, then the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. You kind of partially answered my question, so thank you, Jesse. So my question is, you talk about equity policies. So those policies are the port's policies, correct?
That's correct.
The existing policies. So does that also mean our city will have to come up or adopt some kind of equity policy for us to use to feed into your policy? If that question makes sense.
That's an interesting angle to take for sure. I think that we are working with our newly hired Senior Director of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, working on growing and evolving the port's definition of equity, and we encourage a collaborative conversation of what works for both us as well as each municipality that we'll be working with in terms of those definitions and your priorities.
All right, Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. Thanks for being here. And are we, Federal Way, considered a near airport community?
Absolutely.
Where does that line stop? Is Milton considered a near airport community, or Auburn? Do you know, can you define the area?
The definition, I think if I can scroll back to the principles page, I think that's the best. So this is the definition as the commission has laid it out at this point. So defined as near airport communities with other locations considered on a case-by-case basis, depending on the merits and type of program or project. So there is no formal geographic definition in terms of who's in and who's out in the principles as they've been laid out so far. But I think the working definition certainly includes the 6 cities that participate in the Highline Forum.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councilmember Kopang?
Andy, the important thing is Federal Way is included.
Yes.
Yeah, good. Principle 5 says that SKCF will prioritize projects that are ready to proceed. What kind of projects are going to be considered in this program?
That's a great question. So,
Thank you.
You know, I think that you know, at this point we're evaluating projects that come across come through our inbox based on these criteria, and so I think they could range greatly from noise-oriented projects, educational projects, community capacity building projects, environmental projects. I think that the range of type of project is going to vary greatly, and exactly how those projects are funded, what the funding mechanism will really depend on the type of project and the partners that are involved.
But basically, we're going to have $2 million a year, 750 of which you want to be spent this year, based on the shorter time frame that you have.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there's certainly going to be needs that are going to pop up that are existing. So I think having some guidance from the port on what the scope is, I think would be helpful. I also think that the community has a lot of ideas. So I think that's going to, where's the best forum for those ideas to be vetted?
Yeah. Thank you for that feedback. And we are working feverishly at a staff level to establish the criteria for just what projects will fit within this and what our funding mechanisms are to get money out the door.
Okay, Andy, thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right, and we've got representation at START. We've also, myself and others attend the Highline Forum. Actually, we've had the Highline Forum here on 2 separate occasions.
That's
Fairly recently, actually. So, for input as our the staff person who handles Public Issues Committee, council has ideas. Obviously, we can bring them through either the deputy mayor or Bill Vedino. And Bill Vedino actually attends these regional meetings on our behalf, as do appointed representatives on behalf of the city of Federal Way. All right, thank you very much. Great job.
Okay, thank you all for your time tonight.
All right. Okay, now moving on to the 2020 Census Partnership. We've got Taylor Hoang, Census Bureau Partnership Specialist. Taylor?
I'd like to introduce her, Doc Hanson. I just wanted to briefly indicate that Taylor is a partnership specialist with the U.S. Census, and the reason we asked her to come and talk to us is because this could involve a lot of money, and I would like the council to know the involvement that may be necessary for the city, and how much involvement is necessary, and what kind of sources and funds we're looking for. So with that, I'll turn this over to Taylor.
All right, thank you, Doug.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, City Council members, for your time this evening. My name is Taylor Hoang, and I am a partnership specialist with the U.S. Census Bureau. As we all know, the 2020 census, the decennial census, is next year on April 1st, 2020. And as a partnership specialist, my role is to engage and outreach to various government agencies, nonprofits, community organizations, as well as large and small businesses to inform and communicate the importance of the 2020 census, ensuring that every resident in our state is counted once and in the right place, so that our state receive our fair share of the $165 billion in federal distribution dollars, that we have equal representation and redistricting of our congressional seats. But most importantly, as a partnership specialist, I work to ensure the undercounted and hard-to-count communities such as immigrants, seniors, group home residents, the homeless, and children 0 to 5 have proper outreach and information to understand what it means to our state, our community, and for them individually, that we have a full count of everyone come Census Day, April 1st, 2020. And here's why. Every year, more than $675 billion in federal funds are awarded to states and communities based on census data, on how many residents are counted in each state. That's more than $6.7 trillion distributed over a 10-year period. And based on a study published by the George Washington University, that works out to be about $2,000 allocated per resident counted. The George Washington University also noted that based on 2010 census data and the number of residents counted, Washington State receives over $13 billion in federal funding from 16 of the largest federal programs, which includes education, such as Head Start programs, reduced lunch programs, infrastructure improvements, senior citizens assistance programs, community development block grants, community health care clinics, clean water and environmental protection programs. All of these programs trickle down to both city and community levels. In addition, census data guide local decision makers in important community development plans, as well as census data affect their voice, the residents' voice in Congress, as census is used to determine how many seats each state will have in the U.S. House of Representatives, as well as the redistricting of state legislators. After the 2010, Washington State gained 1 additional congressional seats. As I look around the room and I look around at the makeup of your council, I see a lot of diversity in the room, and that's exactly the community that we are trying to reach. Federal Way has one of the highest population growth in recent years, with 1/3 of the city's residents being of Asian American, African American, and Hispanic American background. And these are communities most vulnerable to be undercounted in the upcoming 2020 census. Based on Census Tract data, which I believe each of you have at your desk, we've pulled up the city of Federal Way, and I've marked down 5 tracts within the city that runs along the I-5 corridor. These tracts in dark blue marks the highest, lowest count tracts with the lowest number of counts of residents in 2010. What we consider low response counts are tracts that has a low response of between 25 to 30%, meaning that 25 to 30% of residents within these tracts will most likely or not likely to respond to the 2020 census or to census surveys. And these tracts, if you look at the diversity or the makeup of residents and population within these tracts, is mostly you have a huge population of over 50% of immigrants, of seniors, combined seniors, and population of young children, of immigrants that speak very little English, and with a very low or up to a high school education. And a lot of folks live in group homes or apartments and are renters. And so these are the low response rate, meaning that if outreach and engagement and communication are not done in these tracts, as well as the light blue tracts that are around this area, which has a low response of 20 to 25%, that means that residents, the dollars that are coming down to Federal Way will be reduced because the number of residents being counted in Federal Way will be a lot less than what is being shown on the population growth of Federal Way. Now, as census enumeration happens, we would do everything within our agency's power to make sure these residents are counted. But we also need the help of City of Federal Way to engage in this process to make sure that folks know that the 2020 census will be on April 1st, 2020, and the importance of the engagement for residents to be involved and count every residence in their home, reminding their neighbors that the importance of what the census means for the community. Current timeline, we have about 270 days left to April 1st, 2020. So there's not a lot of time to get everyone involved and engage in the process. At the state level, right now, we have a complete count committee, which is chaired by Gary Locke, which is bringing community leaders, cities and counties together to discuss and have a work plan in place for the state, as well as at the county level is being chaired a complete count committee by County Executive Dow Constantine. And within that, there are also cities within the county level, which is divided up into North King County, South King County, and East King County. Right now, in the East King County, we invite the City of Federal Way to participate in the Complete Count Committee. In order to be engaged in the process, the kickoff for the Complete Count Committee is on July 26th, which is in a couple of weeks. And at that meeting is when all the cities and the county come together to have a work plan around the 2020 census. This is the first time in the census history that, in addition to paper surveys that folks will receive in the mail, there is also an online process, online form that folks can also go online to fill out the form. And that will happen in March of 2020. And then the April 1st is actual census day, and that's when we encourage everyone to fill out the form. So because of the different method of returning the forms, there's going to be a lot more confusion in years past. So now it makes it even more important and more critical for the city to be engaged in this process. Okay.
All right. Councilmember Assefa Dawson, and then Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you so much for the presentation.
Thank you.
And so as an immigrant myself and living in the dark blue census, a lot of the people living there are in apartments. And the way you identified them is accurate. So one question I have about that is around, well, two. One is because of the conversation around citizenship question, which I know is not going to happen, but it may happen. I mean, all this. I think it's already shut people down. A lot of the people that I talk to in my community are already scared. Therefore, even if the question is not there, people may not respond. So that's one question or one statement I have. But then you talked about different language, accessibility, especially online. How many languages is this available in? And or are there, if the language of choice is not available, are there interpreters who will help people complete the forms in their own native language?
So I'll answer your second question because that's the easier one. So yes, there are translated materials for the actual forms that will be mailed. The census know which household, there will be English and Spanish, and they will know which household will tend towards Spanish, and so they will send those the forms in Spanish. But the actual forms itself will be translated in Spanish, so that's the only Spanish language translated. Online, the forms is in 12 different languages, and it has Vietnamese, Chinese, Russian, Tagalog, Eritrean. All of the 12 main languages will be translated on the online form. In addition, there's 59 other languages translated online with materials that folks can go to read the materials, and all of those documents are online. In addition, the state has a program that a number of community organizations at the state, county, and city levels are translating materials. If you go onto the state CCC, Complete Count Committee, there's a number of resources on there that community organizations, nonprofit can go on there to access if they need to print out materials for their constituents or residents. On your first question, our department have already started the printing process of the forms without the citizenship question. That is finalized. There is a lot of misinformation that is out there in the media. Our goal is to get everyone counted. And the citizenship question makes it harder for us, and we recognize that. That's why I am here today, to implore the city council, to implore the mayor and community leaders and community organizations to work as a team to make sure that our communities understand how important the census is. That despite the misinformation that is out there, the data and the answers and the information that you give on the survey is confidential. It is protected by Title 13 of the U.S. Code. And that protection, as a sworn U.S. Census Bureau agent, even none of us in the Bureau can access that information. It is confidential. It is held under lock and key for 72 years before it is released. The information, the data we gather is aggregated at the end of the year and presented to the U.S. President. And he can't get the data, and the data is not shared to any other agency. And it's protected by Title 13. And that's the message that we need to get out to our communities, because we stand to lose so much more in federal funding and, a number of congressional seats, representation for our community if we don't get everyone counted.
Councilmember Johnson and the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thanks, Taylor, for being here and this information. So kind of like recognizing the importance of the census because of the federal funding, but also, as Lydia mentioned, some of the national rhetoric around immigration. Is there any tangible steps that cities or local jurisdictions can do to eliminate some of that fear, particularly for the historically marginalized or disenfranchised communities? Is there any other cities doing any action steps?
It just really depends. I know that at the City of Seattle, they're a much larger city. Mayor Durgan have formed a task force, a Census 2020 Census Task Force around this, and she's brought community leaders together. She's brought nonprofits, government agencies, and they've come up with a work plan of how to get the message out, the marketing and the PR. They've put funding dollars behind the task force in order to do a well-rounded communication package going out to communities. They're inviting communities leaders into the fold to share messages. I know over at City of Renton, the mayor over there has a inclusion and equity task force as well that has been supporting City of Renton in a number of their work and, in community development work. And so we are also presenting to the task force over there as well. At the end of the day, it really comes down to community voice. It really comes down to Mayor Farrell perhaps issuing a citywide executive letter supporting the census, And it has to be from the top down, from council members as well, that this is an important process in our U.S. history, and we need to have everyone feel safe and informed to answer the survey.
All right. I'll get right on that letter. All right.
Let me know when you have it.
That's what we need. Go. All right, Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, and thanks for being here. Is there a local office that people could go to in Federal Way if they had questions or concerns, especially when they get the form? Or if they need to download it into another language?
So currently, my office, and we have a number of partnership specialists, we are working with a number of nonprofits and community outreaching to the nonprofits and community organizations within the City Way, City of Federal Way. But I don't know for sure if there is an office yet. We don't know, right? Do you know, have you guys heard of anything that's happening in the community yet? But right now, we are outreaching out to the nonprofits. And I know that there's a group, the Washington Technology Information Association, is working in conjunction with one of our partners, which is Northwest Harvest, the largest food bank in the state. They have 354 locations, and I know some of their locations are located here in Federal Way. They are collaborating to build a partnership in which they will set up mobile, computer labs on site at these food bank facilities, so that folks that don't have access to a laptop or computer can come to the facility and fill out their form come March. But Northwest Harvest, as well as some of the homeless agencies that we are working with, is also posting information on there. We're working with a number of retailers to do the train the trainers, so that when they become trained in information regarding the census, folks they will post up flyers. And folks can go there to get information, to take flyers. So that's all in the process right now.
Thank you, because as hard as it is to believe, not everyone has access to a computer, but everyone needs to have access if they're going to follow this process, if they need a different language.
Yeah, and I also want to mention that for any of the nonprofits or community group in the room, the state has just issued a $15 million RFP for request for proposal for census development work grant. The grant is due at the end of the month. The proposal is due at the end of the month, but the $15 million that the state have set aside is for cities, government agencies, nonprofits, community organizations to apply to do census work and outreach.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Appreciate it very much. Okay, and the letter will be forthcoming. Okay, streets update. Deputy Public Works Director Desiree Winkler.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, members of council. There it is. I am here to give you the state of our streets. So streets is very vital. Infrastructure helps us to achieve the city's visions and goals. In our comprehensive plan, we have a whole chapter dedicated to transportation, and the pavements are the infrastructure that is the foundation of transportation. I've highlighted a few words of importance regarding our street infrastructure. As for mobility, our transportation should be safe. We should be fiscally sustainable in how we operate and maintain that infrastructure. It's for the community's health and livability that we have an effective transportation system, and it supports our land use vision and economic development. So in more simple terms, what does good pavement versus poor pavement do for a community? Good pavement is safe and efficient mobility. When you have poor pavement or rough roads and people are dodging potholes and not necessarily being able to travel in a safe manner. Good pavement provides for low-cost operations and maintenance. When it's in poor condition, there's a lot of high costs and a lot of high risks that are involved with having pavement in poor condition. And a good pavement provides a positive city image. It shows economic vitality. And a poor image with poor pavement can show that the city is economically depressed and is having some concerns. So our neighbors, Tacoma, they are notorious for their poor pavements. And their local paper, the Tacoma Weekly, took it in their own hands to bring attention to their plight with the pothole piggy. And this is a little ceramic piggy that they take and they put it in a pothole at various locations. They get feedback from their readers, and really tried to get the local government to do something about the pavement's condition. So for us in Federal Way, our infrastructure is our largest asset. There's 238 center line miles or 545 lane miles. If we had to replace every bit of pavement in the city, it would be over $260 million. So our city streets are rated on a biannual basis. Our current overall pavement condition index, or PCI, rating is a 75 in 2019. We're finishing up our ratings this year. That's a 2 points drop from 2017. The way that our pavements are broken up is that the green is the majority of our pavements, which are in residential neighborhoods. The reds, the arterials, and the blues are the collectors. So what this graph shows is our pavement rating and our pavement funding basically over the last 10 years. Starting from 2007, our pavement rating was an 86. As I said, in 2019, our current rating is in 2019 is a 75. In 2007, we were able to overlay about over 13 lane miles of roadway. In 2018, that has reduced to about 4 lane miles. Our ability to maintain the pavement has been impacted both by a reduction in funding as well as an increase in construction costs. This graph shows what the annual budget has been for our overlay program. In 2011, we took a $500,000 hit and has never recovered. We've continued to operate at a deficit. At the same time, the cost per ton of asphalt has increased over $10 per ton. And again, the lane miles that we're actually able to overlay has been reduced from 13 to a little less than 4. Our PCI has dropped 10 points over the last 10 years, over 10 points. So what is it that we need to do to get going in the right direction? Because we're not going in the right direction. If we keep doing what we're doing now, that's the purple line. We will drop another 10 points at $1.5 million per year. This is actually an old graph. This is the graph from 2017 data. The 2019 data actually has us, if we want to maintain and remain status quo, so keep our rating at the 75 that it is now, we will need to spend $3 million per year. If we want to get back to the heyday of when we were in the mid to upper 80s, where it is the most cost effective to maintain our pavement, it's over $4 million a year in order to get caught up on that backlog and get back to where we were 10 years ago in terms of overall pavement condition index. And the reason being is that it's a lot less expensive to maintain your pavement when it's in good condition than when it gets in bad condition. It's no different than your house. It's no different than your car. You have a car and you want to go get your oil changed every 3,000, 5,000 miles for $40 a pop. That's great. You can do that indefinitely and keep that car going for a long time. Or you can not do that and pay $4,000 and get a new engine. It's no different in the pavement. If all things were great and we could be up in this good category, you know, every 7 to 10 years we could throw $1, $2, $6 a square yard into the pavements and bring it back up to 100. But as it is now, we're in this area where we're maintaining it before it gets too bad and goes down that steep condition reduction curve. And it costs a lot more to maintain the road and bring it back up to 100 when the pavement condition is in less favorable condition. So when the pavement condition index, again, this is 0 out of 100, with 100 being perfect and 0 being gravel, basically. If it was 90 and all we had to do was do a little bit of sealing, it's about $3 a square yard. And as we get into a lesser condition of pavement, poorer condition of pavement, the cost goes up. Where we are right now is generally we're overlaying at about a 60, 55, 60, 65, and we're spending about $30 per square yard in order to maintain those pavements. What we've been doing for the last several years is that because we have so little funds to work with, all of our funds have been going to the arterials. We haven't been able to overlay any local streets for the last 4 years. And that's a risk tolerance, a decision we have to make. I mean, there's a lot more traffic, there's a lot more volume, there's a lot higher speeds on our arterials, plus it costs a lot more if those fail than if a local road fails that has lower volume and lower speeds. And so those are the choices that we have had to make. So in summary, pavement is vital to the city's safety, mobility, and economic health. Pavement is our largest asset that we have to maintain. The overall PCI has dropped over 10 points in the past 10 years due to lack of funding and cost increases. And the overall PCI will drop another 10 points in the next 10 years if funding is not increased. And the lower the PCI is, the higher the cost to maintain, and along with more of a backlog, and it'll cost even more to get back where we are. I'm happy to answer any questions.
First one is, how does this relate? I know that the timing is critical because we have on first reading today the imposition of an excise tax on business activities. Is that what the purpose of this presentation today?
Yes.
Desiree, explain. Well, what is the, what are we proposing?
Connection?
Yeah.
The connection is that we've been tasked a few years ago to figure out how are we going to find more funding in order to maintain our roads. And we believe we've found a very reasonable way and a direct related way in order to provide more funding to overlay our roads and bring that funding up to at least the, let's not slide down anymore, level. It won't be at a level where we can increase back up to, the mid-80s rating that we want to be, but we certainly don't want to fall down anymore.
Very good. Okay, so I just want those folks in the audience and to remind everybody on the dais here that we've got this item that's the last, essentially one of the last items on the agenda for first reading, which is that issue. Deputy Mayor Honda?
Thank you. Thanks for being here and talking about this. So when we go out for grants for paving, are we more likely to get a grant the lower the PCI, or are we more likely to get a grant the higher the PCI to show that we're maintaining our roads?
There's kind of two questions there. One is the roads that we pick. Puget Sound Regional Council has selected a rating where they would like to fund the pavement rehabilitation to be right around a 60. Okay, so that you get a highest score for. You also receive points, you also receive good points when you show that you are doing something to maintain your pavement. So one is, do you actually rate your pavement and have a pavement management system in place, which we do. We rate our roads every 2 years. And two, do you have a regular overlay program, even if it's underfunded? Are you, trying to at least do something to keep your pavements up? And so it's very important, yes, to show that, the city is providing the funding on their part to do the work.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and again, we've got this additional business item, and we'll have a presentation at that time. Thank you very, very much, Desiree, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, now moving along to the next agenda item, Fireworks Enforcement Report, Deputy Chief Kyle Sumpter.
Good evening. It's my pleasure to be with you again. I was here 2 weeks ago to talk about efforts we were underway to limit the amount of fireworks that were used in Federal Way this Independence Day season, and I'm here tonight to talk about the results of that. First of all, you will see an interesting trend here. This is a 6-day look at the Independence Day season. We'll first of all look at the calls for service that came into the police department. Over the last 3 years, you see that total calls for service this year during that 6-day period were a little bit down from last year and a little bit up from the year before, so we're right in the ballpark. Fireworks-related calls, however, were down significantly compared to the last couple of years. Here's calls for service exclusively on July 4th. You'll see total calls were in the approximate average as the previous couple of years, but fireworks-related calls on the 4th of July were down as well. This is the number of enforcement tickets that were issued over the last 3 years. You see that we issued 19 this year. Those are $300 apiece. It's impossible to quantify the number of warnings we give. We typically do not give a warning if we catch somebody with fireworks or we catch somebody setting off fireworks. If we catch somebody, that's usually enforcement. Warnings we give in a variety of looks. I watched the chief this week give a couple of warnings to some houses that were alleged to be serious violators this year. He gave them warnings for next year. Now, those warnings aren't counted anywhere, but we're constantly giving education-related warnings. The fire department this year, South King Fire and Rescue, during the Independence Day season, responded to 14 human-caused fireworks fires. Now, not all of those 14, their jurisdiction, of course, is larger than the city of Federal Way. Not all of those 14 fires were in the city, but all 14 of those fires used your fire resources. This is your fire department responding to all of those unnecessary human-caused fires. Your resources were elsewhere dealing with those preventables, and they were not available for other things. So in going forward into 2020, I'll make a request that we've made the last couple of years, and that is that if we want to see, it wasn't enough, was it? There was still a lot of fireworks that went off, particularly on the night of July 4th. Our efforts continue to not be enough all by ourselves. And so I will make a couple of requests, the same requests that I made 2 weeks ago and that I made the year before that. First of all, we need full community engagement if we're going to make a dent in this American tradition. We'd like to see all owners of properties, particularly multifamily housing and cooperatives like a homeowners association, adopt rules. If you have rules that prohibit the amount of time a garbage can be put out on the curb, and if you can find the household that doesn't cut their grass, then you can certainly impose something for blatant illegal activity that threatens the safety of the other residents. And you can send a citation or whatever format it is, you can send it to that residence as well. We'd like to see a lot more of that type of community collective enforcement taken. And the next thing I would also encourage you to do, you may recall that 2 weeks ago I offered my personal email address. If you will email me prior to noon on July 3rd of next year, I will make sure that the house that you know has violations every year, they get a friendly knock and talk from police officers, making a prevention, education, warning effort to reduce the number of violations that we get next year. Now, I don't want those emails now because the household might change during the next year, but next year, the 4th of July is on a Saturday. If you will email me anytime during that week leading up to it, from Sunday through Friday at noon, I will make sure that a police officer knocks on the door to your violating neighbor, has a friendly conversation, asking them not to do it.
Excuse me, may I? I had a problem in my neighborhood. It wasn't from my neighborhood, unfortunately, and it started about 10 o'clock on the day before, and it went until 1:30 in the morning. And then it started again at 5:30 a.m. with a loud explosion. It was not my neighborhood, and I couldn't tell if it was from northeast Tacoma or not, because we're pretty close down there. But
I can tell you where I live.
I vowed never to be here again for any kind of fireworks.
I can tell you that our collective efforts make a difference. Where I live, it is unincorporated, and it is double. It is twice as bad as it is in Federal Way. So this effort isn't going wasted. As bad as it was far worse out there.
Deputy Mayor?
Are you done with your report? I can
Yes,
wait. Okay.
that's it.
Would it be worthwhile to try to get the King County Council to make a ban of fireworks in the entire county?
I believe so. I'm not sure they're as equipped to enforce it out where I live.
Right.
But it could only help.
Do you know if that's ever been done before?
I do not know.
Okay.
Nope.
My second question is, we had a citizen who said he spent, 8 minutes on the phone trying to get through to report fireworks. Is there a way we can get around that so that?
I don't know what number they called. I can tell you that we had fewer calls for service. Our capacity was not diminished this year compared to last year.
Okay.
We took fewer calls.
I got a report on that. Actually, I think actually that was the one that you were referring, Kurt, that call is at the emails that we got, and I think that's what.
The chief was dealing with it.
Yeah,
this week,
that's what the chief had actually been following up on those concerns. There was a huge water presentation that was done last year by the water, down below where Bayview Estates is. And that went on for quite some time, and it was difficult to discern exactly where there's a property line. And so we actually, the email that we received from several concerned citizens with the Bayview Estates Homeowners Association, sent us an email and said that there was a prolonged show. One of the properties is a bed and breakfast, B&B property, and we've reached out to that owner. The other is a private owner who denies that occurred on their property. And so we're going to make sure, we've reached out to, that's what he was referring to at the very beginning. We've reached out to both owners. The chief has personally talked with those folks. And, that's the thing is actually if you, and every year we deal with this, but if you have a situation in which you've got a chronic offender that does this every year, or now obviously we've been alerted to this situation in regard to, whether it's occurring, on one side of the property line or another, let us know. We'll take proactive steps. We'll reach out to those folks and we'll make sure that, that we proactively ask for compliance with the law, or we'll do it the other way around.
At least one of the callers from that neighborhood, I dealt with a question from him last week. Within 10 minutes of his call to 911, we had officers on scene at the house he was complaining about.
Right.
And the officers didn't observe any violations, and they were on to the next one.
I have one more question, if it's
Please.
okay.
Yeah.
When we enacted this ordinance, we set a maximum fine of $300 per citation. There were other cities that year that had a higher fine, up to $1,000. Do you know if there's a difference in the rate of compliance if the fine is higher?
I do not know. I know that we've received some feedback internally suggesting that we bump up that penalty. Of course, that's not up to the police department, that's
Right.
up to the city council.
I'm wondering if we could get information on that from the cities who do have the higher fines, if there's some way we could get that information.
Well, we'll look into it. I'll ask either legal counsel or Bill Vedino. Who has the higher fines? It would be-
I remember they were up north, but there were at least two cities the same year that we enacted ours that they put their fines at $1,000.
Chief, you're in contact with a lot of law enforcement. Can
I'll
you
call
folks-
around.
Yeah.
You bet. That's
yeah.
easy to do.
Okay,
Thank you.
very good. Okay,
I'll find out how many tickets they issued this season, too.
very good.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
let us know if
What they feel like the impact is.
Right, thank you very much.
Yeah.
And maybe just send it back out to the council.
Sure, happy to.
Great, thank
I
you.
just wanted to thank you, Deputy Mayor, because I was going to suggest we at least look at a $500 fine.
If it would work, but if it's not going to be effective, then
I'll ask around. Yep.
Okay, great, thank you very much. Okay, and great work. I actually, I think we made a dent in it, and, okay, now we've got certificate of appointment, Ethics Board, Deputy Mayor Honda.
Thank you. Is Karen Kirkpatrick here? No, okay, so we have appointed her to serve as a voting member of the Federal Way Ethics Board for a term to expire on June 30th of 2021. Congratulations, Karen, and thank you for your service.
Okay. With that, it's now my emerging issues and report as the mayor. We've got recent community events. We had an amazing time at the our Red, White, and Blues Festival. Special thanks to John Hutton and his entire team. Boy, that was a busy day. We started off at the mesothelioma run, Miles from Miso, and they have just, the staff there just put together a great, great program. Everybody at the community center did a great deal, and we started there at, I think, 8 o'clock in the morning, and you started off the kids first, and they did a little run around the building, and then there was the race for the adults, and that went great. And just, thank you for you and your team. And that was just a piece of what Parks and all of our folks started working on. And there was a big reception, great breakfast. That stuff doesn't happen over, either overnight or without a lot of work. And the big community room looked great. I saw the big screen, and thank you so much for make sure you pass along to your staff that. And then we had the parade over at North Lake, and that's just one of the great traditions. I grew up after my family moved from here in the mid 1970s. We left here and went out to Yelm. And so to be in the tallest building in town was a water tower, as we used to say. But there was something about a small town in which you grow up in that, and it really kind of a tight knit community and a feel. This city, at certain times, even though we're getting near 100,000 folks, whether it's the farmers market or a parade like the North Lake Parade with all the kids and the families, it really does. It had that almost like a small town feel to it. It's really one of the great traditions. Uncle Sam out there with Terry was out there in full regalia, and it was with floats and parades and people in costume and music, and it was really just an absolute treasure. It was really my honor, and many of the council members were there, and hundreds upon hundreds of residents. So really one of the great traditions in our community. It's been going on for quite some time. Okay, and then later that night, we had the Red, White, and Blues Festival. John, what's your estimate on crowd?
Andy assures me at least 20,000 people.
Yeah, that's a lot of folks. This is a population of just about 97,000 people, a little over 97,000 people that call Federal Way home. It's almost 20% of the population or a little over 20% of the population that showed up there, and went from 4 o'clock to the fireworks at 10:15. The fireworks were great, new company, and that company actually does the Seattle fireworks, right? And they just did a phenomenal job, and the musical acts were great. It's really, once again, see everybody there and all the people we don't know and that we do know all coming together. It was really just a great evening. We had my virtual town hall Facebook Live event on last Thursday. Really a great opportunity to hear from people, a lot of great questions. Thank you for those that participated. Actually, if you go to my Facebook page, you could watch the whole thing in its entirety. It went from noon to 1, and was really glad we had all kinds of questions. And I have to tell you, and that's one of the great things about this is there's no way to rehearse for that. As soon as the question pops up on screen, you're on. And so this is just such a great job and a great honor for all of us to do this work on your behalf. There are a lot of issues that we're facing, and so it was fun to address those. And if you have, we're going to continue to monitor that feed. And if you watch it or if you have issues, throw another question on there, and we'll get it answered for you. But that's really, we've been having neighborhood connection meetings for the past several years. I think, all in all, we had hundreds of people that tuned in and watched that. So that was good. Okay, we had the annual Veterans Center Barbecue last Friday. That was a great event, and it was honoring women in the military. And I know that is something I know that Councilmember Duclos has talked about that from years past. And we've got the local VFW commander, Roger Flygare, who's in the back of the room, who chairs our Veterans Committee, and actually also on the Veterans Committee that I put together is Deputy Mayor Honda, who has a real passion based on her family history with her father on veterans. And so we've got new members for that, and it was great to see some of those folks at the, and gosh, it was I'd say about 100 people. How many people do you think were there, Susan? 75?
At least over 100.
Yeah, but over 100.
Maybe even 150.
Yeah, it was great.
And I usually don't go that high, I usually,
Yeah.
but I think there's 150 or so.
I think you're right, and it was a great event. We saw a lot of the council members, a lot of the community out, but it was at the Veterans Center, and they're over there by KOAM off 32nd Avenue on the east side of the freeway, and so that was a great event. Okay, upcoming events. We've got the Federal Rhythm and Blues. That's this Saturday at Town Square Park on July 20th from noon to, I believe, 5. We've got the 63rd Annual Kiwanis Salmon Bake at Steel Lake Park. That's next Friday, a week from this Friday on the 26th at 4 p.m. And that's just a beautiful venue to come out, grab a piece of salmon, talk with, either members of the community and music, and it just is really a great time. And normally we get amazing weather for that event. We've got the Flavor of Federal Way at Town Square Park on August 10th. And then we also have coming up, we'll have National Night Out, which I believe is August 6th, first Tuesday in August. More information on that to follow. Okay, now, council committee reports. First, let's do finance. FedRec, Councilmember Duclos.
The next Finance Committee meeting is next Tuesday at 4:30 p.m. in the Hylobos room. And that's the only report I have now because I gave the rest last time.
Very good. Thank you very much. Okay, on LTAC, Lodging Tax Advisory Committee, Councilmember Moore.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. Again, no meeting this month. City staff is busy working on the committee's work program, including a scope of work on tracking our visitors in and out of Federal Way, which is a really exciting piece of data that I think is really valuable to the community and to us as policymakers. Also helping, this will also help us understand what they're doing, where they're staying, and more importantly, track each visitor back to their household. This is important because once we understand our visitors, it helps us improve our hospitality, education, tourism training that we have been working with the Chamber of Commerce on for the last 2 years in an effort to enhance visitors' experiences. As earlier identified, the Korean American Sports Festival brought nearly 5,000 visitors to Federal Way, which I think is really great. Hotel stays are being calculated, but hotel nights were forecasted into the thousands for Federal Way and the region. I hope to have more information on that in the near future. Also, the Federal Way Nights Baseball Tournament is July 18th to the 21st, and then July 25th to the 28th. And last but not least, I'm very thrilled that we are awaiting with much anticipation for the passage of FedRec's, for the name change of this committee, and I know that we're going through our process, which I'm really thrilled for. I know that my committee voted to pass our new name, and that'll go on to FedRec and then on to council, hopefully before Christmas.
All right. Land Use and Transportation, Councilmember Kopech.
No.
Thank you, Mayor. I gave a pretty complete rundown at the last council meeting, all the things we talked about at Land Use and Transportation. That is actually going to be on the consent agenda for this week, or for tonight, actually, but wanted to emphasize a couple of those. For those of you that love our traffic, I know there's not many of you, we are actually in the process of, we're going to approve procurement of adaptive signal control systems for our, for the traffic lights here in Federal Way. That's a project that Rick Perez has been working on for years. I think he said 20? Was that what it was, about 20 years? Do you remember that? 22 years? Something like that, yeah. I know I asked him why it took so long, but, no, but we're certainly pleased that we're that far along, and I think at this point in our city's history, having an improvement like this certainly will be very helpful. So definitely look forward to seeing that move forward. And then also, we did, we're going to be voting tonight on awarding the contract for solid waste collections. And I know that there's a lot of people that have become very big fans of the great service that's been done by Waste Management. So anyway, that's all I have for my report. Thank you.
Okay, and now we have the Parks, Recreation, Human Services, and Public Safety Committee. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So our last meeting was last Tuesday, July 9th. We had a packed agenda. One of the things we talked about was the King County grants. We received $250,000 to replace the Sahali soccer field with new synthetic turf. So that is great for us because we don't have to use our own money. And we also got a $50,000 donation from the Federal Way Soccer Association. So thank you to them for donating $50,000 to the city for the turf replacement. And so I believe in the fall that's going to start getting underway. We also talked about, Commander Schwan talked about the new police department pilot internship program. So starting this fall, there'll be 4 young adults that'll be interns in the police department, 2 college-age students, and then 2 high school youth. So thank you to the PD for starting that program. We talked about the jail services contract with Kent City Jail. So as we all know, we're going to probably save around $2 million a year getting out of SCORE. And so the Kent City Jail will be one of our contracts starting next year. And then we also had a second quarter public safety crime report from Deputy Chief Kyle Sumpter. So Chief, in your absence, the Deputy Chief did a great job at explaining what's going on in terms of crime in the city this year. And so I think we'll probably get a follow-up on that, maybe at full council, but outstanding job to the Deputy Chief for providing that information. And then we had prioritization of homelessness task force recommendations. So we began the conversation of prioritizing those recommendations, and we're already getting started on some next steps. One of the cool things that we talked about as well was we're working with the Washington State Department of Corrections, depending on how the vote goes tonight, to start a new restitution program. Essentially, this is a DOC-funded program where inmates will be trained and supervised to do cleanup work, picking up litter, debris, land restoration, a lot of that work in the city. So it's a great program that we'll be voting under the consent agenda tonight that will be starting soon if we so choose to vote that way. So a lot of good stuff for parks. Because of National Night Out, our next meeting's not till September 10th. So just an update there. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Sefa Dawson for the Public Issues Committee and the Sound Cities Association.
Thank you, Mayor. And so PIC met last week, and there's 2 items that are going to be up for discussion and vote at the September meeting. One of them is the King County Charter Review. King County Council is proposing to consolidate 3 of the regional committees, the Regional Transit Committee, Regional Policy Committee, as well as the Regional Water Quality Committee. And so SCA stands for that would be to not support that proposal because then it would take away the voice of the regional cities. And so they're working on a letter and also bringing up to a vote by SCA members. So I'd like your input on that from the SCA's packet that we received early July. The other thing we talked about was the GMPC's updated Vision 2050. And so some SCA members are also looking at proposing a joint recommendation letter that would be also incorporated into that Vision 2050. And the last thing that I would like to discuss is the new House Bill 1406, which will allocate state sales tax credit back to regional jurisdictions for affordable housing. And so this is not new sales, but it's sales that the state collects that will come back to cities who are willing to participate in this. And so it's new resources for affordable housing. It's either for renovation, it could be for rehab or construction of affordable housing. So the question that SCA is going to pose is if this money could be used either for rental assistance or towards other supportive services for people who are in affordable housing or experiencing homelessness. And so one of the recommendations is, instead of cities taking on the burden of doing the work, maybe going through existing regional organizations such as SCIP for us, the South King Housing and Homelessness Partnership. And so it was just a discussion, but that's coming up. Cities do not have to participate. And if we do, there's got to be, we need to declare that, and I don't have the date right now, but we just won't get the money, and it will stay in the state's coffers. But otherwise, the cities can actually get, and Federal Way gains about $121,000 a year if we are willing to participate in this program.
All right, great, thank you. Now the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. So as many of you know, we have volunteer citizen commissions, and we have several openings, and I'd like to talk about those. We have openings on the Diversity Commission, Parks and Recreation Commission, the Independent Salary Commission, the Civil Service Commission, and the Senior Commission. Some of these meet monthly, some of these meet every other year. It depends on you and what you're interested in doing. However, the Senior Commission is our brand-new commission that we were very excited to get going, and only 8 people have signed up so far that show an interest in being on the commission. The commission has 9 voting members and 3 alternate members. So I would really encourage you, if you're interested, to sign up for any of these commissions. You have 10 days, because we're going to be looking at applications on July 26th. The city clerk will be. And we will be doing interviews for the Senior Commission on August 13th, because we'd like that commission to be holding their first meeting sometime in September. Please, you can go either get an application, a paper application, or you can go online and sign up, and you'll be contacted by the city clerk's office. So I really encourage you to please get involved. It's a great way to learn what the city's doing and to have a voice in the city, and to advise the city council and the mayor and the city staff on what you think we should be doing in the city of Federal Way. On Saturday, I had the opportunity to attend a dinner down in Auburn, and it was for Elaine and Callie's Place. And some of you might know Dr. Natalie Ellington. She started this program for girls who are aging out of foster care. And she and her board of directors put on an amazing event on Saturday. They invited about 100 girls, and they had maybe 25 to 35 girls show up. They were able to get new clothes, new outfits for interviews for jobs or for whatever. They could get their makeup done. They could actually apply for jobs and be hired on the spot and get other help that they needed with housing. When you turn 18 in the foster care program, you can be kicked out of where you're living. Your foster parents can actually say goodbye to you and kick you out, and that's just not appropriate. So I'd like to thank Dr. Ellington for putting this program together. The cities of Renton, Auburn, and Kent are all supporting this program, and I'd like to bring it to the Parks Committee, because I'd like to see us support this program too in the future. We certainly have fostered children in Federal Way, and we could offer them the support that the other cities are offering. And I will be attending the Board of Health meeting on Thursday in Seattle. We're going to be having a report on vaping and a report on the Gun Violence Prevention Summit, which is going on tonight and tomorrow night in White Center. Unfortunately, we can't be there tonight. But we will have a report on that Thursday. The meeting starts at 1 o'clock, and you can view it on King County Channel 22 if you're interested. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Now the most important part of the evening, a citizen comment. These are for 3 minutes unless you have 5 individuals that have signed on and that are present. And we all know the rules of public comment. There is one thing I need to read, though, and because we're getting close to one issue, and I want to make sure that we're all on the same page. Because a resolution authorizing placing initiative 19-001 related to rental housing is on the agenda tonight, we will allow public comment on the topic. No public comment on this topic will be allowed after tonight, because it will be on the, presumptively on the ballot this November. And as a result, we have guidelines and rules against the use of public facilities with regard to ballot measures or political issues, and therefore it's not legal to do so. So we'll, because it's on the agenda tonight, we'll allow it, but moving forward, it will not be a topic we'll be allowed to discuss while that is pending. Okay, now, let's see here. Oh, we've got quite a number of public comment. I'll read out the speakers, and if you could be ready to go to cut down the time. First would be Heather Pierce, then Ashley Cormier, Stephanie Bukhari, Colleen Mancino, Glenn Steele, Young Kim, Joseph Hoang. All right, first Heather Pierce.
Good evening, Council, Mayor. My name is Heather Pierce. I'm with the Rental Housing Association of Washington. I'm here tonight to discuss the copious, I'm here tonight not to discuss the copious substantive issues with the Stable Homes Initiative, but to talk about procedural violations conducted by the city and to remind the city that authorizing the placement of initiative number 19-001 onto the November ballot violates Federal Way's own city code and procedure. The city code sets out a process for the city attorney to create a true, clear, and impartial statement on the purpose of the measure. This process protects voters by ensuring the measure they support with their signatures is the same fair statement that actually will go on the ballot. We live under a system of rules and laws for a reason, and allowing this initiative to move forward out of compliance with city code is a disservice to this community and residents of Federal Way. The problems with the Stable Homes Initiative are numerous, and Federal Way's handling of this thus far is likely unlawful. Thank you for your time.
All right. Ashley Cormier.
Hello, City Council. I am here to let you guys know that you guys should support the initiative that has to do with stopping unfair evictions in the city. This is a law that really is kind of like, hey, don't kick someone out just because you're mad at them. Or don't kick someone out just because you had a little argument or something and now you want to retaliate against them. We're not saying if someone has damages to their house, yes, that's a great reason to evict someone. If someone is super beyond late on rent, yes, that is a great reason to evict someone. I'm sure you guys can agree. We're just saying have a good reason to evict someone, because a lot of displacement happens, as you'll hear from a lot of your residents who actually live here in Federal Way. A lot of displacements happen, and unfortunately, it's a cause of homelessness when people are just kicked out because their landlord is mad because they rubbed them the wrong way or whatever it may be. Sorry. He's been a little activist with us for a long time now. But yeah, so I'm just here to let you guys know that you should support this initiative. A lot of people clearly in the city of Federal Way want this to be something that is made a law so that they have protections and we can just stop landlords who are just want to kick people out for any reasons from doing so. Thanks.
All right, thank you. All right. And then Stephanie Bukhari.
Hello. So I'm also here with Washington Can, and I wrote up a little speech. So there's a lot that happens around the world that we cannot control. We can't control earthquakes, we can't prevent droughts, and we can't prevent the conflict. But when we know where the hungry, the homeless, and the sick exist, that is something that we can control. I am sure that each of you had a dream when you decided to become a part of Federal Way's City Council, to help make Federal Way a better place. Homeless people are not the problem, they are the result of the problem. Problems only get solved when you stop ignoring them. Please support this bill and help make Federal Way a better city. Together we can, because we're Washington Can.
All right. Colleen Mancino.
Hi, I'd really like for it to pass because people like me get evicted for asking for their apartment to be fixed. That's not a reason to evict somebody. It's a reason to fix it. But without this law, we don't have a leg to stand on. They can just come up to us and say, here, I don't want you here no more. Puts you out of home and you're homeless. Not everybody has the money to go and get another place. And I'd really appreciate it if it would go through so that it could help everybody. And I appreciate you guys hearing me. Thanks.
Thanks. Glenn Steele.
Good evening. I'm here to support this resolution because it doesn't matter if the landlord wants to evict because he can get more higher rents, so he wants to evict the tenant so he can get somebody else in who can pay more, or because perhaps a tenant is demanding that the hot water heater be fixed or the roof stop leaking. I think, or if a person is late on their rent, I think everybody needs to be treated fairly. And so I support I support this resolution, and I hope you will too.
This Glenn. Young Kim. Young Kim? Okay. Young Kim. All right. Joseph Hoang. Joseph Hoang? Okay. Blanico Purcell. Blanico Purcell? Okay. Got the right meeting, right? Just kidding. Just kidding. A little bit of mayoral humor. Mary Fierk. Here? Fierke.
Good evening. I'm Mary Fierke, and I've been a resident of Federal Way since 1975, and glad for that. I'm just here to say that I do support the resolution, the eviction law, for fair treatment of all. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next batch, we've got Laura Mosier, Dana Holloway, Bernadine Lund, Norma Blanchard, Dan Engstrom, and then they're upside down. So we'll wait. All right, Laura.
Good evening, Mayor Farrell, Deputy Mayor Honda, and members of council. I'm Laura Moser with Waste Management. And on behalf of all the waste management drivers and staff that serve the City of Federal Way, I thank you for choosing Waste Management to continue serving your great city. We couldn't be more thrilled, and we look forward to getting started on all the new programs and changes coming, as well as early start enhancements beginning September 1st of this year. Excuse me. Those enhancements include a dedicated Federal Way phone number, extended Saturday customer service hours, 8 a.m. till 5 p.m., 4 dedicated customer experience staff, 2 supervisors, 2 floor leads, who are focused on all the Federal Way customer service calls, and also knowing your community and the service needs so that they can better communicate with the staff that are taking the calls. And they're also going to travel to Federal Way to meet with staff and to get to know the community better too. We're also implementing our education and outreach coordinator, Danae Shorter. She's going to be spending 40% of her time dedicated to focusing on all the programs in the City of Federal Way and helping to reduce contamination. She's based at our local operations, which is 6 miles from the City Hall. And at the start of the new contract on September 1st, 2020, we'll be rolling out all new clean green trucks, brand new carts for everybody. It's a great value with low rates for every business and residential customer in the community. I just want to tell you thank you, and thank you to the staff for all the hard work that went into the process.
All right, thank you, Laura. All right, Dana Holloway.
Good evening. My name is Dana Holloway. As an incentive to developers to build low-income housing like Park 16, Kitts Corner, and Uptown Square, the developer is exempt from paying property taxes for 12 years. That is a great deal for the developer and provides housing for people who live in these high-density multifamily housing units. However, property tax revenue pays for schools, police, fire department, roads and infrastructure, city staff and services, public libraries, and much more. Are you aware that a developer only has to commit, this is up per the revised code of Federal Way, only has to commit to renting or selling at least 20% of a multifamily housing unit as affordable housing units to low and moderate income households to qualify for a 12-year exemption of property tax. So only 20%, and they get a 12-year exemption. I do not think providing housing for 60 households out of a 300-unit complex should qualify a 12-year property tax exemption, but it is a great long-term tax dodge for developers in the pretext of developing low-income housing. The school impact fees make developers responsible to provide money to the Federal Way School District to help offset the cost of additional students, and I believe that that's how it should be. If not the developer, then who would be on the hook financially by the, try that again. If not the developer, who should be on the financial hook caused by the increased impact to the Federal Way schools? I do not see developers passing on building multi-unit housing in Federal Way as a bad thing. It has been stated that the city cannot control the type of housing to be built in Federal Way, whether it is low income or market rate. That means if the school impact fee is reduced to encourage more housing, it very well could result in more low-income housing that are exempt from property taxes. It is critical Mayor Feller and the council members understand the impacts low-income housing decisions have on the City of Federal Way, its residents, revenue, and the resulting increased population on facilities, services, and infrastructure. I sent an email with a 5-page letter attached on this subject to the mayor and the council members on June 28th, over 17 days ago, and received only one reply, and it was only one word: agreed. I am disappointed in their lack of response on what I consider a critical topic for the city. Thank you.
Okay, Bernadine Lund.
Good evening, I'm Bernadine Lund, and I was out gardening one evening, and I came up with an idea of how to spend part of that $10 million the Port of Seattle is offering. Of course, after hearing the criteria, I'm not sure all of these fit that criteria, but I thought I'd read you the list anyway, because it seems like it could be done no matter how. The first one is to buy an adequate noise monitor that we can move to different areas, as requested by the cities. Federal Way had proposed spending $15,000 for a noise monitor, but Stan Shepard recently said that we really needed about $60,000 to get a good monitor. The noise monitor should also use a single event sound measure as proposed by the last FAA authorization bill, and not the decibels per hour is currently used. And I'd also like to have the noise levels posted on the website so that the citizens can see it. Right now, we have no idea. I have a noise monitor on my phone. I don't know how to calibrate it. I don't know how good it is. Another thing they could do is fund expansion of the fine particle study. I know they have money for some of it, but they said they could use more money to do an enhanced study. And they could also spend money on, funding additional soil, air, and food sampling that's described in the Flight Pattern for Kids study that's studying toxic materials close to the airport. We could expand the area where sound mitigation is provided, because right now it's pretty limited. We could, thinking about the toxic materials that come off the jet engines, include air purification or filtration as part of the mitigation to reduce the people's exposure to toxins within their homes. Because they say once the toxins are in the air around the home and in the soil, they're also inside the house. I'd like to use reputable contractors to update and repair mitigation as needed and not require the homeowners to sign an agreement that they will not ask for anything further for the length of the house. And thinking of me anyway, provide people with industrial quality ear protections for those who want to or need to work outside of the home. The other thing I thought would be helpful, which I mentioned at the Highline Forum, was design and print pamphlets with warnings about the negative effects of airplanes. This happens, you can't even buy aspirin or anything at the drugstore or prescription without getting pages of warnings about what to do, what harm it is, the side effects, and whatever. So I thought there were 4 categories. One is fume events, one is noise, toxic emissions, and global emissions. Now, I did find I thought about the pamphlets because, lo and behold, after I thought about it, France has put out something on toxic fume events to give to employees. And, of course, it's in French. I can't read, but my computer translated it to English, and it's kind of funny.
Oh, great. If you want to give it to our city clerk, we'll make sure the members of the council get it. Thank you, Bernadine.
In English?
Well. All right, Norma Blanchard. And then Dan Engstrom.
On June 18th, you brought up the international, what's it called? I have to look it up. Oh, International Property Maintenance Code. And I pulled this up on the web for the code compliance, and it doesn't even reflect what's on that international code, according to their book. I went to the Federal Way Library looking for that book. They don't have it. I went to Kent. They don't have it. They sent me to Auburn. Auburn didn't have it. But they called Covington, and they had it. So I went and made copies. You can pull it up online, but you can't make copies. But I have ordered a book, and I will be getting one. Evidently, I mean, I think you should supply our library here, even both libraries, with this general requirements. And for the general requirements, you have just building codes. Okay, it goes from section 302, exterior property areas, grading and drainage, sidewalks and driveways, weeds. Premises and exterior properties shall be maintained free from weeds or plant grown in excess of geodesics, or to insert height in inches. Noxious weeds shall be prohibited. Weeds shall be defined as grasses, annual plants, vegetation other than trees or shrubs provided. However, this term shall not include cultivated flowers and gardens. Upon failure of the owner or agent having charge of a property to cut and destroy weeds after service of a notice of violation, they shall be subject to prosecution in accordance with section 106.3 and as prescribed by the authority having anyway. Upon failure to comply with a notice of violation and duty, authorized employees or the jurisdiction or contractor hired by the shall be authorized to enter upon the property in violation and cut and destroy the weeds growing here thereon, and cost of such removal shall be paid by the owner or agent. And so if you're going with this maintenance, do you pick and choose what you want to take care of? No? I'd like to have an answer to that question. And also...
Actually, that's our time. Thank you.
You should supply our library with this so that we can have one. But anybody want to look at my book when I get it, hey, call me.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Norma. Dan Engstrom.
Good evening. I'm Dan Engstrom, and I'm here from the Housing Development Consortium. I'm here today to speak on House Bill 1406. And we at the Housing Development Consortium are pushing strongly for each and every city around King County to push for the maximum amount of funding that this new funding source for affordable housing allows. This is not a new tax. This is simply redirecting state sales tax to municipalities for use towards affordable housing. We at the Housing Development Consortium recommend that you pool your resources with other South King County cities through SCIP, as opposed to using these funds for rental assistance, as pooling these resources will have maximum impact. We know that Federal Way has been a leader on the issue of affordable housing, and we hope that you continue to do so, as this is a critical issue that deserves your immediate attention, and the deadline is fast approaching, and it is Federal Way, in order to qualify for these maximum funds, must pass a statement of intent by January 28th of next year, and although that seems far away, it will come quickly. And then 6 months after that, on July 30th, the local qualifying tax must be enacted in order to qualify for maximum funds. Now, these funds are available as soon as this qualifying tax is passed. They do not have to, they can be dispersed as soon as Federal Way is ready to enact this measure. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dan. Okay, Allison Taylor, and then Betty Taylor, and then Kevin Kelly. Then we've got Terry Thomas. Actually, I'm sorry, Terry, you're on the public hearing, right? Okay. Very good. We'll hold off on that. Sorry. Okay, Allison.
I swear Betty and I do not intentionally go back to back every meeting. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Council. I just wanted to speak on the record. I know after public comment, we're going to talk about the Pro and Con Committee for the Marijuana Initiative, and I just wanted to say thank you again to the 7 council members for taking your valuable time to interview, 12 or 13 people at least, to make the decision of how we're going to move forward on this process. I also wanted to just say, I thought that census, I wasn't going to speak, but then I heard that census report, and I just wanted to say that I know we can't really be political here necessarily, but the organizations that I am part of, which are more than just one, are all committed to doing the census work and to supporting however. So if there's an opportunity for us to partner with other political organizations here and other community organizations and the city, I think that we should take advantage of that because this is really important. And I agree with Councilmember Asefa Dawson that there are going to be some challenges around the citizenship question, whether it ends up on the census or not, because of ICE and because of the sort of social climate that we have. So I think the sooner that we can start talking about what those partnerships look like, the better. And as a leader in this community, I think it would behoove me to say that now so we can truly start looking at it. I also want to say that I know that there's a lot of controversy around this tenants' rights stuff and the eviction issue, but I am a social worker in the community. I have clients in Pierce County, and I was with a client recently who had a stove that hasn't worked in a year and a half, but he doesn't pay very much rent. And he has a very disabled daughter, and he probably has some issues going on himself. And when I asked him, why does your stove not work? He said it hasn't worked in over a year, but he's afraid to tell his landlord because his rent was at $600 when he moved in 8 years ago, and now it's almost $1,000, and his total income between he and his daughter's Social Security is only $1,500. and he's afraid that if he pushes the stove issue, that he's going to get evicted. And all I could think of was the work that Ashley does and Washington Can, and how this is real. This happens all over, not just in our community, but it made me cry when I left that house to think that they don't have a working stove for fear of being evicted and not being able to afford anywhere. So I know that there's some it's a hot button topic, and I get it, but for those of us who will likely never have to face these issues, I hope that we work together to support those that do. So thank you.
Thank you, Allison. That's a heartbreaking story. Thank you for sharing it. Betty Taylor. And then Kevin Kelly. We got to put the Taylors together. I didn't do that on purpose. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so.
Please proceed, Betty.
Okay, so good evening, everyone. My name is Betty Taylor. I was looking at the city council, the regular meeting and agenda, and I was reading at I was looking at the mayor's emerging issues and report. And I really was hoping to see night out as one of the mayor's emerging issues, but I didn't see it there. But I did hear the mayor say after he read this, he did mention night out, but it still wasn't on this. So it's like, to me, night out supersedes anything else, because night out is like a national event. And I feel like night out should have been on the agenda, but it wasn't. I was looking, other people were looking. I'm like, well, what the heck? I mean, it didn't make no sense to me. It didn't make no sense. I'm like, where is it at? You know, because, okay, like the council, they take the Tuesday night off for night out. But is the message really getting out about night out? Is the message really getting out about the purpose and about what it is? It's just not a place. It's just not you go to your neighbor's house and eat some chicken and go home. Okay, and say, I done ate some food, we done have some good conversation. But what was the conversation about? What did you talk about? Did you talk about crime and safety? What did you talk about? Or did you just sit, I want some chicken, I'm gonna go here and get chicken, I'm gonna go here and get mashed potatoes, get me some macaroni and cheese? It ain't about that. It's about getting to know your neighbors. I talked to Lindsay today. Lindsay told me that only 29 areas in the city have registered. This city is 96,000 strong, but it's not strong. We need to do better. We need to do better. This is not better. It is not better. We have National Night Out at the Town Square Park. We have been working for over a year to try to make this the best night out for the community. We put a lot of work and energy and thought process thinking, what would the city like? What are the city's needs? We put that in everything. We make sure we have the city at the forefront of whatever. It didn't matter about us. It matters about the city. The city better care. You better start caring. This is not caring at all. I care. My team, Susan Honda cares. Claire Wilson. City got to get together. I would like even to see like banners over the downtown. Our city celebrates night out. No signage. I am really, truly disappointed. But we are going to have night out at the new Town Square Park, and it's going to be successful. We have planned diligently for you, and we're going to make it happen for you, not for us, but for you.
All right, thank you. Kevin Kelly.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, members of the council. It's a tough act to follow, but my name is Kevin Kelly. I'm the General Manager for Recology King County, and I'm here tonight to speak with you on your solid waste procurement process. Recology is proud to have scored highest on the qualitative components of the evaluation criteria and believe we are the best service provider to help the city achieve its goals over the next 10 years. Given the city's stated goal of attaining optimal services and value for Federal Way businesses and residents, and the extremely close scoring of the top two proposals, we respectfully request that council consider removing the decision on the solid waste collection contract from tonight's consent agenda. Instead of rushing this decision, the city council could instead pursue negotiations with the highest scoring proponents to see if an agreement can be reached that provides Federal Way residents and businesses with the highest quality of service at competitive rates. Recology is a 100% employee-owned company, and that difference is evident in the quality of customer service we provide. In addition to our best-in-class service, Recology is prepared to make a significant capital investment in the city by opening a new hauling yard and administrative office within the Federal Way city limits. Given that the top two proposals were within half of 1 percentage point, we urge you to take this opportunity to review our service offerings and negotiate with both proposers, or proceed with a final round of proposals from each of the companies. Thank you very much for your time and consideration.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, is there anyone else who'd like to provide public comment? That's the last sheet I have. All right, thank you. And once again, this is the most important thing I think we do during our public comment. All right, now we're on to the consent agenda. These items have already gone through committee and can be passed all at once. I'll read all the items, and then I'll ask if council would want to pull a separate item for consideration. All right, item 6, consent agenda. Item A, minutes for the July 2nd, 2019 regular and special meeting minutes. Item B, authorization to submit proposal for King County Council allocated waterworks funding for the storm drain art walk project. Item C, 2019 storm pipe repair phase 2, 85% design report status and authorization to bid. Item D, South 348th Street entrance sign, 30% design report. Item E, 2019 overlay project change order and contingency reset. Item F, 2020 asphalt overlay program preliminary budget list and prior authorization to bid. Item G, adaptive traffic signal control system phases 1 and 2 procurement. Item H, authorization to apply for transportation grant. Item I, solid waste collection services contract award, garbage, recyclables, and compostables collection. Item J, Sahalee Soccer Field synthetic turf replacement. Item K, Federal Way Soccer Association donation for field turf replacement at Sahalee. Item L, jail services contract, Kent City Jail. Item N, Washington State Department of Corrections Master Agreement Class 5 Community Restitution Programs. Before I ask for a motion, is a council member asking for an item to be pulled for separate consideration? All right, hearing none, Deputy Mayor Honda, do you have a motion?
Yes, I move approval of items A through M on the consent agenda.
Second.
So a motion, a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Matters passed unanimously. Moving now to the public hearing, reforming the North Lake Management District, LNMD number 2. At this time, I will open the public hearing. First, we'll have a staff report from Lea Meyer, our Surface Water Manager, Water Control Coordinator. Then we'll have citizen comment, council comments and questions, and resolution. So, Lea?
Good evening.
You're on.
All right. Good evening, Mayor Farrell, Deputy Mayor Honda, council members, and engaged members of the public. My name is Lea Meyer, and I am the Water Quality Coordinator for the Surface Water Management Division of the city's Public Works Department. I am here tonight to speak on behalf of the North Lake Management District regarding the renewal of their Lake Management District. Following public comment, the policy question before you will be, should council approve a resolution to renew the North Lake Management District Number 2 and call for a vote by affected property owners on the renewal of the proposed district? So let's revisit what a lake management district is. According to state code, a lake management district is a form of special service district by which assessments on lake area properties can fund specified lake management activities such as water quality monitoring and aquatic vegetation management, and it operates much like an HOA. A little bit of a history on how the LMD was formed. So in the early 90s, King County had a lake stewardship program that conducted water sampling. And about a decade later from those efforts, the North Lake Steering Committee was formed in 2004, and the Integrated Aquatic Vegetation Management Plan was developed. Then the city was awarded a grant from King County for aquatic weeds management in 2005, and all of that activity really spurred the North Lake property owners into forming the LMD in 2009 that will expire at the end of this year. Some benefits of a lake management district include creating a process and structure for planning and implementing lake management district activities, establishing representation through an advisory committee of lake property owners. It develops an effective communication network to talk about key issues on the lake, such as best practices for water quality. It also creates an equitable and fair funding mechanism through annual assessments that are billed to all affected property owners, and because these are annual assessments, they create continuous funding so that both short and long-term activities can be planned and implemented, such as aquatic vegetation control that inhibits invasive aquatic weeds on the lake. The North Lake Advisory Committee is comprised of 7 members, including 5 residential property owners, 1 representative from the Department of Fish and Wildlife, and 1 representative from IRG, the Old Weyerhaeuser property. There's also staff support for various coordination efforts. The petition for renewal of the Lake Management District was brought before the council earlier this year and was deemed sufficient. This would be, the proposed district would be for 2020 through 2029. The primary purpose of the district would be aquatic vegetation management through through annual plant surveys. So again, we're looking for noxious weeds that need to be controlled, as well as nuisance vegetation that prohibits some recreational uses of the lake. Additionally, there's public education and outreach efforts to notify lakefront property owners about best practices to keep their lake healthy. Additionally, water quality monitoring ensures that the lake is staying healthy by collecting monthly data for 6 months each year, and so we can track trends about the health of the lake and make sure that we are doing everything we can to keep it healthy. The boundary of the proposed district does include all lakefront properties and deeded lake access properties. The duration of the proposed district is 10 years. The proposed assessment rate structure, as currently delineated in the petition, but that will be having its separate public hearing later on this year if the vote passes for the renewal of the LMD, is delineated by property type, whether that is residential, commercial, or the Department of Fish and Wildlife public access area. The estimated LMD annual costs are based on the LMD's work plans that are set annually over the last 10 years of the LMD. This totals just under $18,000 annually and involves some of those task items that I mentioned previously. This is set annually by the LMD Advisory Committee, and so these represent estimated costs for 2019. So a little Cliff Notes version of the next steps, is this is quite a lengthy process. Currently, tonight, we are holding a public hearing for comment on the renewal of the Lake Management District. And following that public comment period for the public hearing, the council will have the ability to approve the resolution that renews the Lake Management District and calls for a vote by affected property owners. That vote, so if that motion passes, that vote will be conducted via mail ballot. So all affected property owners will have their vote counted. And if that passes, there will be an ordinance renewing a North Lake LMD. And then finally, there will be some additional resolutions and public hearings on the assessment role, as well as the appointment of the advisory committee. We will be beginning, should everything fall into place, assessment collection will begin in spring 2020 for the renewed LMD. Thus, the options before council tonight are to, 1, approve the proposed resolution to renew the North Lake Management District Number 2 and call for a vote by affected property owners on the renewal of the proposed district, or number 2, do not approve the resolution and provide direction to staff. The mayor recommends option 1, and I am available for any questions and will hear any comments at this time.
Okay. It actually calls for council comments or council questions and comments after that. Let's do citizen comment first. Terry Thomas. Thank you, Leah. Good presentation.
Mayor Farrell, Deputy Mayor Honda, and council members. My name is Terry Thomas. I'm actually the managing director, if you will, of the group. And I wanted to take and say what happens and what has happened throughout the history of this Lake Management District. Fortunately, I'm the only one left that's been on it since the beginning. And part of the original process where we were part of the study group. We had the grant to get ready to do this. So we've been here, it's been 12 years I've been on the lake, and 10 of those, Chuck Gibson and I have basically, before he moved out, ran the, oversaw and just directed the traffic within this entity. We've done 4 things that have extended, that have reached out beyond the Lake Management District, but happened because of it. One of them has been pretty important, that the vetting process that you have for members of the different committees on that the council and the city of Federal Way have, that vetting process has been strengthened through what happened on the North Lake board. Jim, I think, remembers that. And so that was a key item. So that's helped everybody in the city. The second one is ordinances. When this was King County, one example of that is that the no combustion engines on the lake. What happened when the county, that was a law that was active in the county. When the city of Federal Way annexed that in, that law no longer existed. And so we worked and got that instituted back onto the lake. Now that's going to go beyond, because we have to take and get to the fisheries department that actually includes it, so they can police that in case it needs to ever happen. Right now it's just a city ordinance, and the control of that is actually supposed to be done by the City of Federal Way Police Department. Third thing is that we've coordinated with Fish and Wildlife on the planning. They have we plan between 9,000 and 9,500 trout every year, and North Lake is one of the highest catch rate lakes on opening day, and has a great reputation. So the lake's been held, kept in good control on that. And the final thing is the taxing entity that we are. The taxes that we collect are lienable taxes. So we get a separate bill from the King County property tax, and that travels with your house. So what we do, we operate within that budget. We have not gone over that budget, and so makes no economic impact to the city council and your treasury. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Is there anyone else who'd like to make a public comment on this issue, on the reformulation of the North Lake Management District? All right, hearing none. Council, do you have any questions or comments? We had Councilmember Moore, then Councilmember Seppadopoulos, Councilmember Tran. Councilmember Moore?
Lea, thank you for your presentation. I appreciate it. One of my interests was slide number 11 with regards to the NLMD boundary and durations. It says the duration 10 years, and just to kind of questions to why 10 years? How do we come up with that number? And
Oh, sure.
Yeah, just curious.
Sure, that's a great question. So in the revised Code of Washington, Chapter 36.61, that sets out all of the delineation for how to form a lake management district and then how it operates. So the maximum duration of a lake management district is 10 years. So I suppose we could make it for something shorter than that, but it is, I think, best for planning goals, and the committee decided to choose that 10-year maximum duration again.
All right, Councilmember Josefa Dawson, and then
Yeah.
Councilmember Trent.
Thank you so much for the presentation. My question is this something that could be replicated at any of the other lakes in our city? Or is it just for North Lake?
No, so actually, we also do have a Steel Lake Management District that was formed in 2003, and then they were also reformed in 2013. So they will be looking at reforming again in 2023. So I also know there is some interest from other lakes within the city. It is something that any lake within the city could look at for managing water quality efforts on their lake.
And so if they're interested, or if they don't already have a district, they can reach out to you?
They could, absolutely, yes. I have some great resources, especially going through this process. I have become intimately acquainted with all of the steps, so I would be very happy to help guide that process.
Thank
Very good. Councilmember Trent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Lea, for your presentation. I have a question regarding the proposed assessment rate structure. The proposed rate structure is about $15,000, and your estimated annual cost is $17,700. So the difference is about $2,400 per year. Now, I know that you have a reserve of $11,000, almost $12,000, but within 5 years, you will burn through that reserve or surplus. What is the plan after that?
Sure, I can speak to that. No, that is an astute observation. So the proposed assessment rate structure is roughly a collection of about $15,000 per year. Now, in comparison with the Steel Lake Management District, that actually keeps the same assessment rate each year. The North Lake in the petition and in the previous or the current management district, that assessment rate is subject to CPI inflation for the Seattle index. And so that will increase year on year throughout that 10-year duration. So that will cover some of that difference in the long term. Also, some of the So I will go to the estimated annual costs. These are set at the beginning of each year, of each calendar year. They are often overestimated costs. Generally, actually, I have a note here. So average annual expenditures over the past 9 years is roughly $11,660. So this is a high estimate of what is actually spent on all of these task items, but we do have quarterly meetings at which we do have budget reviews, and based on those budget reviews, the committee is able to decide whether they would like to spend less on a certain item or whether they would like to reserve more funds for future planning, which is one of the great things about the LMD and the continuous funding mechanism of annual assessments, is that if they do know that there is a project coming down the pipeline in a few more years, they can choose maybe to do one aquatic vegetation survey instead of 2, so that they will have reserve funds for that future project.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right, Council, any other questions? All right, Lea, again, great job. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Okay, and at this time, is there a motion to close hearing by Councilmember Kopang? Or I see resolution on there. Is there?
I move to close the public hearing on the reforming of the North Lake Management District Number 2.
Second.
All right, there's been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, opposed? All right, public hearing is now closed. On the main motion, Councilmember Copang?
Yeah, I move approval of the proposed resolution.
Second.
All right, there's been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the matter passes. Thank you. Okay, now going on to council business, items 8. 8A, authorization to apply for Department of Ecology Water Quality Capacity Grant. First, we'll have a staff report from Lea Meyer, Surface Water Manager. Well, Lea, you're on again.
I get to stay up here.
Yay.
Well, good evening again, Mayor Farrell, Deputy Mayor Honda, council members, and engaged members of the public. Again, my name is Lea Meyer. I am the Water Quality Coordinator for the Surface Water Management Division of the Public Works Department. I am speaking for this presentation on behalf of my boss, the Surface Water Manager, Teresa Thurlow. And in regards to the authorization to apply for and accept the Department of Ecology fiscal years 2019 through 21 Water Quality Capacity Grant. The policy question before you is, should City Council authorize Surface Water Management to apply for the Ecology fiscal years 2019 through 2021 Water Quality Capacity Grant and accept the grant should it be awarded? A little bit of background information. On July 2nd, 2019, the Department of Ecology announced the availability of funding under the Water Quality Capacity Grant to support activities under the NPDES Phase 2 Municipal Stormwater Permit. The application period closes August 2nd, 2019. Awards are $50,000 and are targeted at providing capacity for jurisdictions to implement their permit requirements. As we did just receive a new permit that will become in effect August 1st, 2019, there are many new permit requirements that this grant would be able to assist the city with. Thus, the options considered before you are, number 1, to authorize surface water management staff to apply for the Ecology fiscal years 2019 through 2021 Water Quality Capacity Grant and accept the grant should it be awarded. Or number 2, do not authorize surface water management staff to apply for the Ecology fiscal years 19 through 21 Water Quality Capacity Grant. The mayor recommends option 1. And I am available for questions at this time.
Council, any questions on this? Councilmember Copang?
Yeah, I move to authorize staff to apply for grant funds as outlined and accept grant funds should they be awarded by executing an interagency agreement.
Second.
It's been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the matter passes. Thank you very much. Thanks,
Thank you all.
Okay, item B, authorization to apply for and accept Department of Ecology Waste Reduction and Recycling Education Grant. Staff report from Jeanette Brizendine, Recycling Project Manager.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, council members, and guests. I'm Jeanette Brizendine with the Public Works Department, and I'm here to ask for grant funding on a very similar note to what you just heard. The policy question tonight is, should the City Council authorize submittal of grant funding requests to the Department of Ecology, as well as subsequent acceptance of this grant funding in order to support implementation of local projects focused on waste prevention and recycling outreach? The Department of Ecology released this grant on July 1st. It is for a 2-year grant similar to the one Lea just spoke about. They are giving awards up to $60,000 for local municipalities and nonprofits, and it is due on August 8th. We would like to use this grant funding to expand existing programs. One of them is our multifamily recycling outreach education program. This provides technical assistance to property managers as well as door-to-door education for residents. This is something we have done for quite a long time. We have a consultant that's leading this, and with this grant funding, we should be able to reach at least 4,000 more homes. We would also like to use this funding for community waste reduction classes and events. We have done green living classes and worked with different organizations, so we'd like to put on at least 16 classes in the next biennium, which are going to be a variety of sustainable topics. So it could be anything from composting to gardening, backyard chickens, beekeeping, anything that falls under green. We'd also like to use this money to help support the repair cafes, which are free exit events that the community can bring clothing, electronics, furniture, anything small for free repair. The grant budget, as you can see in the table and also in the memo, we'd like to use $15,000 for the multifamily outreach and $16,500 for the environmental classes and repair cafes out of this grant. This grant does require a 25% match, so we would utilize the King County Waste Reduction Recycling Grant that we currently have that's already paying for these programs. So we're just being able to expand these to more people. So the options considered tonight: 1, authorize submittal and acceptance of this grant funding request as outlined in the memo, or 2, do not approve submittal of this grant funding request. The mayor recommends option 1, and I can answer any questions.
Council, any questions? Councilmember Moore?
Thank you. Jeanette, all I have to say is I appreciate the work that you do here in City Fedaway, and I know I've gone to your Fix-It cafes, and I tell you, there's a lot of times where I just walk away thinking, gosh, I wish I had their talents to fix things, and they're just amazing. And just to kind of give illustration, it's Roger Freeman had a wonderful artwork that hung in his office, and it broke, and I brought it in, and I've been saving it for like literally a couple of years now. And I brought it in, and Larry, the executive director of South King Tool Library, was spectacular. The customer service was phenomenal, made it so easy where I can just drop it off, and fixed it, literally fixed it. Now it's hanging in my new office. And so it's really meaningful work that you guys are doing. And I have to say, if you go to slide, can you go to slide 5, please? That's a beautiful picture. Care to explain the picture?
This is a photo that we took, we staged to use on door hangers. So at the time, my intern Anna, my husband Trent, and then my son Elliot, who is now 5.5. So
great photo.
Thank you.
All right, council, any other questions? All right, Councilmember Copain.
I move to authorize staff to apply for grant funds as outlined and accept grant funds should they be awarded by executing interagency agreement.
Second.
It's been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Great job. Thank you very much, Dan. Okay, item C, resolution, appointment pro and con committee members for advisory proposition number 1 regarding marijuana-related businesses in the city. Staff report from Ryan Cole, our city attorney.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and members of council. As you can see, I'm kind of the rest of business, so I'm going to combine some of these items in a one slideshow that I would like to pause to vote when appropriate. The first issue on, for, I guess, Council Business C is advisory proposition number 1 to appoint pro and con committees. State law requires the City Council appoint pro and con committees. The purpose of the committees are to draft independent position statements to be put on the ballot to express pro and con positions. As you're aware, council interviewed volunteers last night and tonight and has selected 3 individuals for each committee. So the options available to council are to pass the resolution with the names that you have selected, amend the resolution, or take no action tonight and give further direction to staff. Any questions?
Council, do we have those names handy?
I don't.
All right, the deputy mayor does. Can you please read them out loud?
With the motion?
Yes, please. Let's start off by, actually, before we do that, were any questions of Ryan before we have the motion and the listing of the names? Okay, hearing none. Deputy Mayor Honda?
Thank you. I move approval of the proposed resolution appointing to the Pro Committee Allison Taylor, Catherine Crawford, and Chrissy Grant, and to the Con Committee Jack Walsh, Lori Sherwin, and Jim Stiles. I'd like to thank everyone who applied and thank the council for the last 2 evenings of being together and having great meetings. I would also like to say that the council could only appoint 3 people by King County's rules, and these 3 people will have their names in the voters' pamphlet, which they all agreed to. However, more than 3 people can work on getting these statements created. So that as these groups get together and meet, and there is a deadline, they do have a very tight deadline, the chairs of the Pro Committee and the chair of the Con Committee can reach out to the others who did apply, and they can request, if they would like, their help in creating the statements. Thank you very much.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Second.
All right, there's been a motion and a second to approve those individuals that have been identified. There's been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, congratulations to those identified individuals. All right, now, moving on to item D. This is the resolution authorizing the placement of Initiative 19001 concerning rental requirements for landlords and rental rights for tenants on the November 5, 2019 general election contingent on certification of sufficiency from King County elections. Ryan?
Thank you, Mayor. Similar to the process we followed to place the marijuana advisory vote on the ballot, 2 resolutions are required to process the citizen initiative to put it on the ballot. As you're aware, the citizen initiative was received on June 27th, 2019. We have a fairly abbreviated timeline to make the deadlines for the elections deadlines to get it on the ballot. So I'm going to go through that here in a second. The first resolution will authorize the placing of the measure on the ballot contingent upon finding of sufficiency by King County that the petition has the required number of signatures. That last line is important, contingent upon finding sufficiency. We have currently not heard from King County Elections on this issue. They're still processing the signatures. So the resolution explicitly makes the future action contingent on what King County finds as far as the signatures go. So here's the timeline. Tonight, we propose that 2 resolutions are passed. One adds the ballot measure, once again contingent on the signatures being validated by King County. The second resolution will direct staff to advertise for volunteers to be committee members on the pro and con committees. July 19th, we will advertise for volunteers by publishing in the newspaper. I believe we have to do that we have to give notice by Wednesday, and it's Friday is the 19th. We will have an open period of July 22nd through the 26th, when we'll be accepting requests for volunteers to participate on the pro and con committees. We propose having a special meeting of council on July 30th to interview the people who have volunteered to participate and to select and appoint. We'll actually note that meeting for action to appoint 3 members each to the pro and con committees. At some point after that, the city clerk and myself will meet with the pro and con committees to brief them on their duties, and we'll give them a timeline and the deadlines that they need to comply with to make the ballot. The 2 key points, deadlines for them will be the statements that the committees will draft will be due August 13th, and then rebuttal statements will be due August 15th. So once again, there's 2 resolutions up for tonight. The first is the ballot title, which I'm going to go through here in a second, and authority to transmit to the elections contingent on the signature verification. And the second is the authorization to advertise for the pro and con committees. So moving on to the ballot title in question, state law requires that the city attorney formulate a concise description of what the proposed ordinance contains, and also a question. Both of these are limited in length, and it's a pretty tight limit, and you'll see that in the question that we formulated, because the proposed ordinance is, I think, about 10 pages long, and I had 75 words. So it's a pretty tight statement. State law says that I must try to form a true and impartial description of the measure's essential contents, and to the extent reasonably possible, not create prejudice for or against the measure. And I've, not just myself, but my staff and I have put a lot of time and effort into thinking about how to phrase the contents of the ordinance in a fair and impartial way. We believe we've done that. So the ballot title is here. It's City of Federal Way Citizens Initiative number 19-001 concerns enacting rental requirements for landlords and rental rights for tenants. The question is, this citizen initiative would enact an ordinance to amend the Federal Way Revised Code to require landlords to comply with existing rental laws, to establish obligations and duties for landlords and defenses and rights for tenants regarding requirements that landlords must meet before evicting tenants, retaliatory actions, rental agreements, and rental agreement renewals, to create classes of tenants afforded additional rental rights, and to adopt penalties for landlords and procedures to enforce the measure. And then the question is, should the citizen initiative be enacted into law, yes or no? This is the format that's laid out in state code. The effect of taking action tonight is, once again, if King County Elections verifies the signatures, we will transmit it to the King County Elections to place it on the ballot. We'll advertise for pro-con committees. We will, from tonight, as the mayor stated earlier, before public comment, no further public comment will be allowed on this topic pursuant to state law on the use of public facilities to promote or oppose a ballot measure. And that will be in effect until the election. Any questions?
Council, any questions? All right, hearing none. Deputy Mayor Honda, do you have a motion?
I move approval of the proposed resolution.
Second.
It's been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
And just, I'm sorry, this is kind of sloppery motions. We're on item D.
D,
that's correct.
right.
Correct. Resolution, correct. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, matter passes unanimously. Item E, resolution directing the city clerk to advertise for pro and con committees members for the November 5, 2019 general election regarding the Citizen Initiative 19-001 and setting a date of July 30th, 2019 to make committee appointments.
I don't have a further presentation, so
I
if
have a
there's a
motion.
motion.
Deputy Mayor?
I move approval of the proposed resolution.
Second.
By motion and second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, opposed? All right, passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Item F, Police Support Services Association Collective Bargaining Agreement. Mr. Cole?
Thank you. By way of background, the city negotiates with labor unions routinely to come to agreements on collective bargaining agreements that set wages and work conditions in the workplace. The city is represented at the bargaining table by a team. In this case, it consists of police managers, HR managers, legal, it's myself that's included in this, and then periodically the finance director also attends and helps out when we have financial questions. The union is represented by their chosen representatives who they elect internally, and they also have an attorney that has represented them in this matter. The last agreement we had with the PSSA, is what we call this union, expired at the end of last year. We've been operating without one since then. The proposed agreement that we are presenting tonight would cover the period of January 1, 2019 to December 31st, 2019. So it would be half retroactive in pay, and it's not a long-term agreement, and we'll explain that in a second why, but we'll basically roll over immediately into negotiating the 2020 contract. Key points of the agreement that is presented tonight is that we propose a 2% wage increase for the affected staff. This is the same wage increase that all the rest of city staff, including the Teamsters Union, the Police Guild, and the unrepresented employees got for that year. We are planning a citywide salary survey and work study that is currently under contract and is going to start momentarily. We've agreed to include the PSSA in that salary study. They were not automatically to be included in that. This was a negotiated term of this contract. They asked that we make a minor provision to authorize flex shifts for our 2 animal control service employees with supervisor approval. Management has said that that's something that they can accommodate easily, and so we've included it. And then there's various housekeeping and language fixes, including language in the contract to address the U.S. Supreme Court Janus decision, which, as you know, altered the landscape of collective bargaining rights. The mayor's recommendation is that we approve this agreement. I do want to add one thing. I got an email just before this meeting that the PSSA met today and voted to ratify the agreement, so they've already approved it. Are there any questions?
All right, council, any questions? All right, Deputy Mayor Honda?
I move approval of the proposed 2019 collective bargaining agreement with the Federal Way Police Support Services Association and authorize the mayor to execute the agreement.
Second.
Been motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, passes unanimously. Item G, Resolution King County EMS Levy Authorization. Staff report. I believe this is more of a correction.
It is. Thank you, Mayor. That is exactly right. I'm sure everyone is having kind of deja vu about the title here. The City Council took action to pass a resolution supporting the EMS fire levy at a previous council meeting. The last resolution had a draft number apparently in it that we received from them at 27 cents per $1,000 spent. After they did further analysis, I guess after they gave us that number, they refined their budgeting numbers and concluded that they only needed 26.5 cents per 1,000. They asked us to, the county basically won't accept our resolution with the wrong number in it, and I suspect they just want to be able to say that it's been unanimously accepted by all affected cities. So they've asked us to pass another resolution with the correct number. So the resolution before council tonight has the corrected number in it. It's identical in every other way. The mayor's recommendation is to pass the updated resolution.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Honda?
I move approval of the proposed resolution.
Second.
It's been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, matter passes unanimously. All right, Arts Commission appointment, alternate to voting. Councilmember Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I move to appoint Jocelyn Pocock as a voting member of the Arts Commission for a term to expire December 31st, 2019.
Second.
It's been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, matter passes unanimously. All right, now we're on to first reading for Council Bill. This is item 9 to ordinances, first reading. Item A, Council Bill 763 relating to the imposition of an excise tax on business activities. First, we'll have a staff report from E.J. Walsh, our Public Works Director, citizen comment, then followed by council questions, and we'll go from there. E.J.?
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, members of council, and members of the public. So I am here tonight to give a brief presentation on what was presented to LUTC related to the imposition of an excise tax on business activities. The policy question before you tonight is, should the City Council approve the ordinance to amend the excise tax on furnishing solid waste collection activities within Federal Way? Some background information. You heard the majority of this from Desiree earlier during the presentation section of the agenda, but in summary, we have been underfunding the overlay program, and the conditions of our roads have been drastically going down. And this is, what you have before you tonight is not a full solution. This is an effort to stop the bleeding. This is an effort to get us to a steady state. It does not restore it to where it was 10 years ago. But to that end, in summary, what you heard earlier is that we have been seeing the roads deteriorate over the last 10 years. Council has previously directed staff that maintaining our roadway network is a priority, and we are working to do that. Relative to the reduction in dedicated overlay funding and simple costs of construction going up, which is being seen region-wide, our dollars are going less and less far each year. So we were asked several years ago to review funding options and to allow for improvements and to come with a funding plan to council. So the pavement management, and this is a slightly old slide, although the numbers haven't really changed, and they haven't changed for us at all. But the point that I will make is, if you look at the number where we stand compared to the surrounding cities and some of our neighbors, Auburn's at 15,000 per lane mile, Kent's at 17,000. Now, I will also tell you that Kent has undergone an extremely aggressive program to actually increase this drastically from 2017, as I'm sure some of the council members are aware, and they are well above 17,000 per lane mile now. So with this tonight, we would get to approximately 12,000 per lane mile. So the solid waste collection impacts, what we did as part of this exercise trying to identify areas was trying to figure out where the root cause was and what's driving it. And when we started looking at the solid waste project related to the council's direction to reauthorize that, we looked at a couple of options. We know that the solid waste trucks are the largest contributor to deterioration of residential streets. And you heard earlier tonight from Desiree that they're also 48% of our city streets are residential. So we looked at a couple of things, and we know that one solid waste truck is equivalent to 1,500 cars driving down the road. And we know that drastically reduces the lifespan. So as part of the RFP process, we looked at a couple of options. We looked at, is there a way to reduce the weights of the trucks and get those numbers down? We looked at, is there a way to limit the number of trips on a residential street? And the answers, and we talked to APWA, Sound Cities, and many others in surrounding cities, and the answer to all those questions is no. It's driven largely by the households, and we can't cut down the tonnage of waste the residential house puts down to accomplish this. We can't back our way out of it with regulation, not registration. So, but what we did find is two of our neighbors, specifically Kent and Des Moines, have implemented an excise tax that relates directly to this problem. So we started looking at that as part of the RFP process. So as part of the RFP process, what we originally presented to council was that the expectation from staff, based on what we knew from talking to surrounding cities that had gone through a similar process, was to expect a 20 to 25 or 20 to 30% increase if we did not go through a competitive process. This is the information that we relayed to council. But you should still expect somewhere in that 20% neighborhood if we go through a competitive process. We get a savings, but it's not a zero. So we did receive, it was a 19% increase in rates. The second proposal, the second lowest scoring, was a 34% increase in rates from current. Through the selection of alternatives and through the presentation that LUTC heard from Rob and from our consultant, and structuring the contract, the work of our staff, and in all fairness, I do need to give credit to Waste Management staff. They have been a vital partner in this effort. We have managed to reduce that 19% effectively to 0% increase. So the key rate reductions that our residents have seen are continuing to have every other week recycling, same as it is today. That saves about $3 a month. Not embedding single-family compostables, that saves approximately $9.50 a month. And also quarterly single-family billing as opposed to going to a monthly billing. That saves just over $1 a month. In the end, that saves $13.61 for the average residential household in the city. So the excise tax local examples, you heard about two of them. The other large outlier that I'll point out is Vancouver, Washington. Their excise tax is 27.3%. We're not anywhere near there, either today or proposed. So today we're at 7.75. So what we are proposing is a 10% increase in the excise tax, and that will, for the average household, equate to somewhere between $3 and $4 of that 13. So we're still proposing to pass the majority of those negotiated savings back to the residents. We're not proposing to take that 13 and apply that all to this. The majority of these savings are slated, are intended, and what you have in front of you tonight is that savings gets passed back to the residents. So with that 10%, the way it's broken down is a minimum of 70% of the collected revenue has to be used on residential streets. That's the reason we're collecting it. It's the nexus. It is directly going to that. That is the same setup that Kent and Des Moines have as well, with slightly different target numbers, but the same. The majority goes to residential streets. What you heard tonight is with the current funding, we are basically stuck on the arterials. So this is asking for a policy direction to actually designate a portion of the source funding to be specific to residential, knowing that the impact is from the collection of solid waste on residential streets. The remaining revenue does need to be used on the streets, but can be used on any street within the city. So a large portion of that would go to expanding current projects the worst roads. So the other thing I will point out is this is an addition to the overlay program. This is not to supplant the existing funding the way this is set up. And then the final thing is that this does not go into effect 30 days after reading as a typical ordinance does. The effective date for this will coincide with the new contract. That way everything is smooth as far as our residents go, that they're not seeing an increase from this and then a change when the new contract starts on September 1st of 2020. We're doing it as part of that contract process, but this will have an effective date the same as that contract. So the expectations of the generation of revenue for 2020, because we're not starting until September 1st, 2020 is a low year. It's approximately $375,000. 2021, it's about 1.5 million. In 2022, it goes to 1.53. So after the LUTC meeting, through some additional review, there were two minor Scribner level errors that were corrected in the ordinance that are in front of you tonight. The first is the fund designation for the existing tax was corrected to match what's currently for that existing 7.75. It's just a housekeeping error. And then the second is also a housekeeping item. Section number 3 was duplicated. There were actually two section 2s in the ordinance to LUTC, so it's now 1, 2, and 3 instead of 1, 2, 2. So the options before council is to approve the proposed ordinance or to reject and provide direction to staff. The mayor's recommendation is option 1. At the last LUTC meeting, the LUTC did unanimously recommend approval of option 1. So,
Okay, and our agenda says, next thing we ask for citizen comment. Is there anybody here that would like to speak, citizens comment in regard to this matter? Okay, hearing none. Council, do we have any questions?
Yes,
Deputy Mayor?
thank you. Can you tell me if this passes, would it be able to be used for the curbing around some of the islands in the neighborhoods?
Yes.
And will the city make those decisions as to how badly that is affected by the garbage trucks, or would the neighborhoods ask for that?
So that would be by the city. That'll follow the same methodology that our current overlay program uses.
Okay.
But the short answer is yes, this funding is eligible to do that, as well as ADA improvements to as we've discussed many times previously, if we pave a street and we pass an ADA ramp, we're required by federal law to make it meet current requirements.
Okay.
So that is also part of this, that we will follow federal laws.
And I don't see in here, but I know we talked about it at one point, what is the actual dollar amount that a family could?
So it's 10%. So for the, and you're right, it's not in there because it would be a table that's several pages long.
Okay.
Because there are multiple different rates and different services that a household can choose. It ranges roughly from 80 cents a household per month up to approximately $4 a month per household. And it, again, depending on the service level that resident chooses, it's somewhere in that neck of the woods.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, Council, any other questions? Councilmember Tran? Hey, Councilmember Moore, do you have a question? Your microphone's on.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll wait.
Councilmember, what?
Go ahead.
Councilmember Tran.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question, not really related to this, but rather maybe a legal questions. Do we have ability to impose some kind of user fee for the large trucks that travel within our city?
Like the big semi?
Are you saying all trucks or you, okay.
All trucks.
That's a much more complicated question than you would think. So there's interstate commerce implications. I suspect the answer is no. Basically, cities or states can't pass laws that impact people from other jurisdictions, and when we're talking about trucks that are just passing through, usually the answer is no.
I'm just curious. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Moore, do you have something? Okay. All right. Would the city clerk please read the ordinance title?
Council Bill 763 relating to the imposition of excise tax on business activities. Ordinance of the City of Federal Way, Washington relating to the increase of the excise tax upon everyone engaged in the business of collecting solid waste within Federal Way and expanding the definition of solid waste and amending Federal Way Revised Code 310.020 and 310.040.
All right. Councilmember Kopeng, do you have a motion?
Yes, I move to forward the proposed ordinance to the August 13th, 2019 council meeting for second reading and enactment.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the matter passes unanimously. Council reports, Councilmember Duclos.
I have no report.
Councilmember Moore.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. I actually have this no, never mind.
I'm ready to kick you.
My colleague to the left just said she's ready to kick me. It's always good to have fun.
You're gonna miss me.
I will miss you. I really will miss you, Danny. A couple things, and I'll be relatively quick. First and foremost, John Hutton, who's the Director of Parks, like Councilmember Johnson stated in his update, committee update, I continue to be amazed at the talent that one of your employees had to research and find a grant opportunity that solves one of our priority issues. And I believe his name is Tony, is that right, John?
Yes, that's Tony Collins. It was not a grant, but it was a program that is a very affordable and a wonderful program.
That's right.
And I could not agree more. Tony's fabulous.
Thank you for correcting me. Absolutely. It's a program that we're going to be implementing, and it is an outstanding, outside-the-box thinking. Kudos to Tony. So I appreciate him and his work there. The next thing I wanted to kind of state, and that's, I think all of us or most of us have seen the press conference that Police Chief Carmen Best had with the City of Seattle with regards to police officers leaving the force in Seattle, and that's kind of captured my attention for a bit, and I think it's a reminder to me, and I can only speak for myself certainly, that public safety obviously, and again I'll state it again, obviously is a priority for the City of Federal Way, and it's a reminder to me that we need to do what we can to support our police officers. That is absolutely important, and we have a challenge of how do we support our police officers, but support our youth, support our other entities that need that attention. And so I know that I look forward to discussing with my colleagues, with the mayor's office, and continue to find that balance. But to me, I appreciated watching that press conference because it again is a reminder to me that we need to support our police officers. We need to do everything we can. We need to do everything we can to ensure that they feel like they're being supported at this level. And I assume, and I can only imagine in various cities that some, obviously Seattle, that some police officers are frustrated and fed up because government officials won't support them. And so this is certainly something that will continue to be on my mind as I continue to serve as a council member here in Federal Way. And I know that the public, cares for our police officers. I know that the public has a lot of, has concern with public safety, and I also know that our numbers and the work that we're doing is paying off. And I appreciate the work of the police department, especially when it comes to social media and communication. I think that's helped. And so I just wanted to kind of share that a little bit. And the last point I wanted to mention is it's really interesting because I've been, I don't know why, and Councilor Copain and I were kind of talking about this the other day, and that's just been in this thinking phase, kind of reflecting phase. And not a day goes by without realizing how blessed I am and thankful I am for the opportunity to serve our residents, our constituents. And so, certainly sitting up here, the seat that Roger Freeman once occupied, the seat that many others have occupied, I am ever so grateful for the opportunity to listen, to learn, and to act on behalf of our residents. And with that, Mr. Mayor, I'll end my report.
All right, Councilor Copain.
I will be brief tonight. I just want to just reflect on the great deal of satisfaction I had in being able to join with the rest of the community, or a large portion of the community, at the Red, White, and Blues Festival. I find that to be just a fantastic community event, and it just continues to get better every year. I think the entertainment was fabulous, so thank you, Director Hutton. I think the teamwork of the parks staff was exemplary, and I really did not hear of any issues. And then, having the police department there to basically just provide a level of security so that people could come and go and feel safe. I think that in the end, it was a wonderful event, and I got to see a lot of people there and really enjoyed our community coming together again at such a great event in a great venue. And again, heard the fireworks display was fabulous. I was not there. I was taking care of my dogs who don't like the fireworks, but that's okay. I did see through the trees a few fireworks. So anyway, but definitely very proud of our city and the ability that we have to come together and enjoy a holiday like 4th of July together. Thank you.
Councilmember Tran.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to take this opportunity to thank each and every one of you on this council for the decision that you made a couple of weeks ago to send to ask the voters for their opinion regarding the pot shop in the city. I know that majority of you already have enough votes to overturn the ban, but the fact that you decided to ask the resident for one more time, that show your commitment to the community, your respect of their opinion, and for that, I just want to say thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Johnson.
I think we're all on a thank you, same vein here. So I definitely wanted to thank the park staff for the July 4th event. Went out without any drama or errors, and so I really appreciate John and your staff and just being there all day. The amount of time, and also the officers as well, and folks that work for the city that didn't have to come that were there too, that I saw. So really appreciate that, and also just wanted to thank the community for coming out, and 20,000 again. And I think just from around the region, hear a lot about different events throughout the region, but ours is definitely one of the highlights, I think, in the state, really. So just appreciate the staff for their work on that.
All right. Councilmember Sepidasa.
Thank you, Mayor. I also want to add to Parks kudos for the number of hours you do put into it. Also, Police Department, I think you were there all day into the night, right? And so that's a huge commitment, and so thank you. I also want to remind the public that we have Flavor of Federal Way that is being put on by our Diversity Commission and our own Jerry Lynn. It's going to be our second annual, acknowledging and celebrating the different cultures of our city. And so please come celebrate with us. It starts at 11 o'clock on August 10th. There's going to be different kinds of cultural music and food. And my personal favorite is going to be a traditional Ethiopian coffee celebration. And so come and check it out. And if for more questions, you can call Jerry Lynn and or go on our website. And talking of fireworks, I was flying to Atlanta during the fireworks, and I actually got to see fireworks from the plane, and it was amazing. It was a great experience. And to add to that, I was going to Atlanta for the annual Ethiopian soccer tournament that is held throughout the country, and Seattle brought the soccer trophy, the championship trophy, once again. So I'm proud of my team. That said, earlier I did mention House Bill 1406, and when we were at AWC, that's the workshop, one of the workshops I attended, and I forgot to mention with the deadlines for resolution, it starts on July 28th into January, and then ordinance by July 27th of 2020. And I would like for this to go to the Parks committee meeting for further discussion, and maybe have people come present, and people like Skip to come and share their opinion. This is up to 20 years revenue, shared revenue, if we decide to do it. So I think it's something worth exploring and deciding whether or not we do want to pass a resolution and/or an ordinance on this. And with that, I end my comment. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, may I make one more comment?
Sure.
I just want to acknowledge the women's soccer team for winning the World Cup for the United States. So, way to go, ladies.
Here, here. All right, Deputy Mayor Honda.
Okay, Councilmember Sefadossin, we did discuss this at the last council meeting, and we did decide that we would do further study on this, on the issue that you've been bringing up, the House bill. So, I have a few things, and I have 5 minutes. 5 minutes, okay, I can do it. This salmon bake, the 63rd Annual Salmon Bake, I can't leave without talking about it. July 26th, from 4 to 8 at Steel Lake. Tickets are $23 in advance or $25 at the door. Unless you're a senior citizen, then they're $23 at the door. Now, we do have kids' meals. We have some auction items. This is our major fundraiser of the year, so we would really appreciate your support. And I do have to agree with what the mayor said. 2 years ago, when I was co-chairman of this event, it sprinkled off and on all day, because we get there very early in the morning to start setting up. And at 4 o'clock, it stopped, and the sun came out. And it was awesome weather for the rest of it. At the Salmon Bake, the Veterans Committee met yesterday, and we will be having a board there, similar to the setup we had at Flag Day, where the citizens can tell us the things that are important to them in having a Veterans Memorial here in the city of Federal Way. So please look for that. 10 years ago, Rosebud Children's Theater Conservatory started their first season. And this is started by Holly Rose. She is an amazing director. She works with children from all ages and brings the best out of them. So this is her 10th season. This is sponsored by the city, by the Arts Commission. And July 19th through 21st, Jack and the Giant will be presented. This will be the younger group of kids. And that's Friday and Saturday, 7 p.m. for Friday and Saturday, and Sundays at 2 p.m. This is at the United Methodist Church, 29645 51st Street South in Auburn, just down the road from us. And they have air conditioning there. So if it's really hot out, it's really nice to go in there on a Saturday evening because it's nice and cool in there. Little Women will be the teenagers group, and they will perform August 2nd through 11th. Once again, Friday and Saturday, 7 p.m., Sunday at 1:30, 2 minutes, okay? And this, I would really encourage you to support this. This is an amazing group of people. August 16th through 18th is Desna Cup. It's their 12th year, and they're an amazing also group also. South King Tools is getting ready to open. They have membership, and membership is free. They need volunteers to help finish up the final stages of the construction of the tool library. So please help them. We can get you more information if you're interested. And my last thing that I will spend a minute and a half on is National Night Out and Betty Taylor. So I've been working with Betty for the last couple of years on this. This will be our 3rd event. Betty, Claire Wilson, and myself have been the core team, but Betty is the person, and this is so important to Betty that she's so passionate and so caring about this. And the first year we had 300 people, which we weren't expecting that. Last year we had over 300 people, and we know that because we ran out of food, and we know how much food we have. This year, Betty started out, I'm going to give Betty the credit because Betty is the person behind this. And Betty started out very soon after our last event, getting volunteers, getting donations, getting this whole thing set up, and it is so much fun, and we could, we're planning for 500 to 600 people. And it's from 4 to 9, well, I say 4 to 8, but 4 to 9. Please come, it's a town square park. There will be games, there will be entertainment, there will be free food, and there'll be community organizations there to talk to. And it's just, without Betty Taylor and without her passion and her commitment to providing a place for people to go and celebrate National Night Out and meet each other and meet our police force and meet our fire department and meet our elected officials and meet your neighbors and meet your business owners in your community. Because not every neighborhood in Federal Way does this. My neighborhood only started doing this a few years ago. I used to go to my mother-in-law's neighborhood, and her neighborhood doesn't do it anymore. They just don't have anyone who is interested in planning it. So this is where anyone and everyone in the city can come. I know I'm out of time, but please come, and thank you, Betty, for your commitment to Federal Way, because this wouldn't be happening if it wasn't for you. So thank you very, very much.
With that, we're adjourned at exactly 10 p.m.
Yes.
Yes. All right. Thank you, everybody.